Hello, everyone. Good evening. It is your host and conductor on this spooky ride. It is me. It is I, your host and founder.
It's me. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another spooky stream. Another crazy day in our world. Oh dear, guys. Hello and welcome aboard. And we are joined on again by Ruben making his comeback. Hello and everyone and welcome. See if we can, Ruben. Let me see if we can hear you. Hold on, Ruben. I'm not able to hear you clearly. Let me see if I can fix my sound here. I should have done all this before. Great. Hold on, everybody. Give me just a second. Let me see if we can fix this over here. Apologies for the delay. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Ruben, can you hear me? Okay. That's not working. Let me see if I can try the user settings over here on Discord. And yes, guys, we do have our Discord. Our Discord calls are back, so if you want to join in, the link is in the description below. Please go ahead and test that out so we can be able to go ahead and try that out. Okay, let me see. Ruben, try talking now.
No.
Okay. I guess we're working now. It's working now. Perfect. Awesome, man.
Perfect.
Alrighty. Welcome aboard. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's Spooptober. It's like spooky time. It's very spooky. So perfect time for me to make a comeback.
Yeah. Yeah, some people are coming back from beyond the grave, I guess. Alrighty, everybody. Let me go ahead and check out our comments over here. Alright. Put on my glasses. I haven't put on my contacts on today. I'm just ignoring that. Hello, Adam. Hello, Akshar. Hello, Osman. Hello, SD, Chicago Rail Fan, Hyokem, Clarissa, Star Force, Adam, Brian, Rock Rail Fan. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome aboard. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into what is going on with our supply chain. Ruben, anytime you want to chime in, man, you are free to come in. And probably after we go into these articles, because we're going against 3 different things over here. We're going to look at Brightline, Amtrak, and also what is going on with our supply lines, guys. It's pretty bad. I was trying to get a picture. Maybe I can find it while we're getting things going. But there's a picture, if you guys are familiar with the supermarket, a Kroger. Some Krogers have basically run out of things that they've basically put on a blanket in front of shelves with pictures of jars and cans and stuff like that to make it look like as is some sort of Potemkin village of Kroger, of full supermarkets, when there's nothing there. And this is really more to do with that. It has less to do with that we're running out of items and more to do that the supply chain cannot take what's going on right now for many different reasons. And this is something that's been going on for quite some time in this country, and it's been a long time coming, guys. It's really, really bad, like real bad, and it could get worse. So this is article over here out of Yahoo Finance that the supply chain issues could last until early parts of 2023, a shipping analyst explains. Ruben, have you been keeping up with all this craziness so far?
I mean, trying to keep up with the craziness in the USA is like taking a shot. At first it starts okay, and then it's just going downhill the entire time. So, I try to stay up. I try to follow everything, but sometimes I even go like, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy, man. I mean, and this is the thing. This has been going on for quite some time. And people don't quite understand how bad it is. I mean, well, last time we talked about the amount of jobs that passenger rail transportation projects could bring to the United States. As we've seen in other countries, it brings not just construction jobs, but also jobs in operations and other ancillary jobs concerning the operation of a passenger rail system. And we've seen the decline of the U.S. Of irregular families and a purchasing power of regular people in the United States. And how bad is it? We went over it a little bit in the last stream about how bad inflation is. So if you can look at this, guys. So this is a inflation calculator. And this inflation calculator is interesting because it also has the shadow stats, which I personally see as the real behind the scenes numbers of how bad things actually are. So if you guys are not familiar, again, we went over a website called shadowstats.org that basically goes into the real or what they call the real numbers behind the unemployment, saying that the unemployment is in actuality if you bring in people who are not looking for work, because how the U.S. Labor Department looks at unemployment. If we've had dismal job numbers in the last week or so come out, but the actual real unemployment rate would be somewhere around 25 to 30%. So think about that. That's 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 people in this country that are unemployed. And it's only going to get worse because we don't have an infrastructure. That really helps. So let's look at this. So I took what the minimum wage was back in 1969. Yeah, 69. The year. No, this was the year that the boomers love 1969. And again, let's put a disclaimer because I keep hearing it from baby boomers. It's like, oh, stop picking on us, stop picking us. I've put this disclaimer so many times. I pick on millennials. I pick on Zoomers because they keep picking on eating Tide Pods. I pick on everybody. All right? Nobody is getting out of sight. I pick on everybody. I don't care. That's just how I am. But here's 1969. So whenever your dad or your grandpa tells you that, back then I was only getting $1.60 an hour or $2 an hour, you convert that for just 2020. Okay, because like 40% of all the money supply now in the United States was probably printed in the last 14 months or so. I think it's some ridiculous number. If I recall correctly, something around that realm. But if we convert it to the inflation rate, what the real number is for 2020, and this is, I would guess, saying the same month 2020, I would assume October 2020, $1.60 minimum wage would be $75.24 in 2020 dollars. Think about that. That's people keep saying $15 minimum wage. We're way beyond $15 minimum wage. If to keep up with purchasing power, to keep up with the price of what or the value of $1.60 was back in 1969, it would be $75. Probably more because this is again 2020. Things have gone pretty drastic. Unfortunately, this administration does not have a good grasp on it. Not like the last administration had a very good grasp on it, but this one basically has, Diary of a Wimpy Kid grasp on everything. So it'd probably be close to $85, $90, $100. That's pretty bad, guys. It's bad. Oh man, but yeah. So you guys are more than welcome to save any articles if you want to look at. So we're going to look at a couple things here, and I'm going to try to bring in some things. But let's get through the bad news first. And yeah, let's we put this Choo Choo Charles. So this is a game that's coming out on Steam. I just saw a trailer on YouTube. It just came up on my recommended. So this is pretty messed up. You're basically coming up with an armored train to go ahead and fight off this demon train that's trying to kill you. Pretty spooky. I know there was a Choo Choo Charlie book that was pretty messed up about like an old big boy steam train that was being replaced and basically like slowly died away. And it was like, yeah, this is just life, and it was rhyming and stuff. It was kind of creepy. But that's life, guys.
One wild fever dream, that game.
Yeah, so it's coming out supposedly Q1 2020. I'm not promoting anything. I'm just saying I found it interesting. If whoever the developer for the game wants to go ahead, who's the dev, 2-Star Games, if they want to promote it, they're more than welcome to do it on a train channel.
I mean, we were not promoting it, but if you want to strike a deal with us. can always contact us.
Yeah, Adam's asking, why do we need this game? You don't need this game. I'm just saying it looks pretty fun. So you can run your own train. You can run your own train. You got like a 50 cal machine gun in the back, and you're just going ahead and just killing this demon train. So that's pretty cool. But here's another thing. So this came out October 8th. I believe, was this DeSantis or no? Florida Ports Council President CEO Michael Rubin issuing a statement that Florida ports, including Port Tampa, could be a more efficient alternative to move consumer goods crossing the Pacific Ocean. So why are we talking about the supply chain? Why does this have to do with passenger rail? What does this have to do with high-speed rail or anything in general? Why do I keep bringing this up? Why am I so obsessed with the economics of things? Because, well, guys, if you have a strong infrastructure, you have a strong country, okay? And some people think that, you're being extreme, banning cars out of city centers. You know what's extreme? What's extreme is 45,000 people dead a year from car accidents. Okay, and this is recent numbers. Last year there wasn't nowhere near the level of car traffic as there has been in the last several years. Correct? So you have the event that goes on. I don't know if YouTube is still banning people. I'm just used to it at this point. You had the event that transpired that kept people inside, so there wasn't as many people going on in the roads. But eventually you had people that figured out, there was a mixture of people that figured out, hey, the roads are empty. Why don't we just go hooning on the roads and go completely ballistic Mad Max style on the roads? And people did go crazy on the roads to the point where a lot more people died and speed limits were being broken. Cannonball runs, bull runs, people were doing that. Basically, bull runs and cannonball runs are basically races across the country, to make it in the fastest time. Those records were being broken almost on a daily or weekly basis. So, of course, the need for speed, gives you a pretty sixth sense of look, I love cars. I think cars are great. The problem is we have too many cars, and car culture in this country is not at all on a healthy basis, okay? Most people don't even know how to change their tire. I mean, that should be required, that you knew how to at least fix your own car, because people just go ahead, buy cars, get themselves, buy a $25,000 car and sign on for 25% APR, so they're paying like $400 a month to basically long-term rent this car, put themselves into debt. The big three are basically very happy about that because that's their market. So you stick yourself into debt in a death trap. And then at 100,000 miles, the car's perfectly fine, but you're going to go ahead and give that up and put yourself in another 36-month lease. Basically start the whole process again. That's not healthy. That's not healthy, and that's contributing to an indebted culture and indebted people and a people that don't really have an infrastructure. You know what else is extreme? Because people keep thinking that what I'm saying is extreme, or not any of you people in the comments, but there are some people that say that, and I'm saying it's not extreme. I want everybody of every race, of every creed, color to live a happy life, wherever it is, but it's extreme. What's extreme is that we're $30 trillion in debt, and we have nothing to show for it. So let me see. There's an article over here that I have. Let me see. Does this work?
Yes. There's something to show for that debt. Crippling infrastructure. That's something.
Yeah. That's all we got to show for it, guys.
There's this fun story I remember. Back in 2019 when I was in Wisconsin. There was this, I gotta say the right word, highway or freeway, I don't know, it's been, you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
it was like this 4 lanes or two lane highway near Burlington, Wisconsin, and it was all concrete paved, and damn, this is really old highway. How old it is? From 1950s? We're nah, mid 90s. So just wait. So you're telling me that they built a highway completely and then brand new in the 90s to the standard of the 50s?
It didn't even last.
Worse than highways from the 30s. It's what?
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because it's easier to go ahead and turn over that and bring on more contracts to go ahead and basically keep an economy of of contractors of building roads. I know there's a better way of saying it, but that's basically what it is. That's the reality of it. All right.
It's shameful. It's shame.
No, tell me about it, man. It's just an issue that's just going to keep going and going and going because, it's going to stop. The party does end at some point, if you want to call this a party. It's more like Mr. Bones' Wild Ride, and it seems like we want to get off Mr. Bones' Wild Ride. That's a very a good quote to say for Spooktober or October or whatever. I want off Mr. Bones' Wild Ride. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's an old meme from Roller Coaster Tycoon. It's a meme probably old as some of you guys. I mean, we have, I don't know. It just shows that I'm kind of getting older. I'm turning 28 this month, so happy birthday to me. I'm not, I'm getting older, 28. It seems like yesterday when we started this.
Yeah.
But time's going by, guys, and there are some things that are happening. We have some good things that are happening. Amtrak is kind of slowly trying to get itself together. Brightline is really pushing forward. And I got some pictures from that. My family's went down to Aventura and took some pictures of the construction down there. So things are moving, and they're moving quite quicker than people would think. So it's we have some things that are good that are happening. So there's a bright light in this whole entire thing that's going down. But yeah, things are going to get worse before they get better. I'm just going to keep repeating that because that's the reality of things. And I want to be truthful and honest with everybody here. It's not because I'm black pill, far from it. It's not because of terrible things that have happened to my life. That's just a part of reality. I'm just trying to make sure that I give people the truth, and we try to educate and advocate to bring on this type of change that we need for this country. We need to build an infrastructure system. To say that we're $30 trillion in debt, and we have nothing to show for it. It just goes to show you. Before I go to this Amtrak article, let me just go real quick into what's going on in, I guess you could say, our rival, our nemesis. As always, it's another China article. So for those of you who are not familiar, China is in a big real estate bubble right now. Okay, and they spent themselves pretty big into it. This guy looks like he's out of this that Netflix movie or series, Squid Game. I haven't seen it. I just know that's a big thing now. I don't know. Maybe I would have seen it in some alternate reality. I'm not too interested in it. Kind of familiar with there was a Japanese film that came out like a couple of years ago, kind of similar premise, except it was like more of a ghost and ghoul sort of thing of kids in a school and whatnot. So it was kind of similar to that. But yeah, this is saying, so Chinese growth slowed sharply in the third quarter as property investment cooled. So if you guys are not familiar, there's a company called Evergrande in China, which is basically the Chinese Communist Party's own company for real estate. Pretty similar to what we had back in 2008. China is going to see that exponentially at a far bigger rate than what we've seen before. Okay, why is this a big deal? How is this going to affect the U.S. supply chain? Because back in the 1980s, the amount of imports we were getting in from China were around the 200 million, 230 million mark or something like that. We're now taking in, fast forward to about 2020, 2021, we're taking in about 150 times more of that. We're taking in about $30 billion of imports from China. Why? Because we've gotten rid of our supply lines, we've gotten rid of our own self-sustaining infrastructure, our own self-sustaining manufacturing, etc., etc. Okay, this is why infrastructure is important. Okay, this is why having a manufacturing economy and having blue-collar work is important. This whole entire BS sort of thing to get people that, You don't need to work a low brow blue collar job. We'll just ship those over to other people so we can enslave them for pennies on the dollar. Here, learn IT so we can go ahead and then ship that off somewhere else, or learn this degree that you're not going to be able to use, and you're going to be doing PowerPoints and Excel for the rest of your life. China's not doing that, so yeah, China's going to be in a crap ton of debt. And how bad? Pretty bad. Let me see if in this article over here it shows how badly. And again, you can't trust everything out of China. You gotta take everything for kind of with a grain of salt.
I mean, if you want to be, if I can blackpill a few people, just like occasional blackpills in Spooktober, just keep in mind that China owns 1.09 trillion US dollar debt from the US. So China has bought debt from the US. So if China's gonna have a credit crunch, they're gonna start looking for money somewhere else. Well, especially to the people that own the debt off.
Either they're gonna look for money, or the other possibility is that they could just ignore that and start something with Taiwan. It's happened before in human history where in countries. I mean, how many times has this happened in the 20th century? A country builds itself up a lot, goes bankrupt, and says, hey, time to start a war. Pretend that we're off. I mean, it's happened with Japan when their supply lines were off. They said, we can't get our own supply, so we'll just take it. That's what happened.
1930s Axis economies.
Yeah, and this is what's going on in our day and age, guys. Yeah, I know I'm jumping in from place to place here, guys, but this all fills in together. Because what's going on in China? Because they put themselves into debt, right? So I don't remember the quite exact number of how much debt they are, because it's not like they're gonna tell us or anything like that. We do know there's a bubble happening. People have been talking about this. I remember back in 10th grade, I got this Time magazine article. It was called The China Bubble, and it had like this picture of a Chinese kid or Chinese girl, blowing bubble gum, and it's a big Chinese, red and gold flag with the stars, and talking about how the Chinese economy is going to burst, right? The difference is the Chinese economy. Let's say they're in whatever trillions of dollars in debt that they are. They've built themselves infrastructure. Yeah, some of these buildings, 50 stories high, you probably blow on it and they'll probably just tip down. just like that, tip down with nothing else in between. But they at least have, they built more railways, high-speed railways, than the whole world combined and doubled. They've built themselves massive, major cities, bigger than, so the infrastructure may not be, up to par. But is the United States infrastructure really up to par? I mean, come on, we have buildings crumbling, built bridges crumbling. Okay, so as much as we make fun of China or live leak videos of another Chinese worker getting eaten by an escalator or something like that, this is happening in the U.S. too. Not because we're building things that are shoddy. Well, that's part of it. I mean, I guess some things in the United States are pretty built shoddily right now, but it's because the things that were made throughout the last century are beginning to give in. We're all familiar with, the Baltimore Tunnel in D.C. that's, built in 1872. And that tunnel, more than 100, close to 150 years old. And it's falling apart, and it's holding together at the seams. We have bridges that are over 110 years old, like the Susquehanna Bridge in the Northeast Corridor. I mean, this is where the United States is going. So, yeah, guys, it's getting bad, but there are some good things, and we will bring good things that are getting built. I'm just trying to get the pictures in from Google Drive because my Bluetooth isn't working on my laptop. This is how I usually store pictures, but I'm trying to get them so you guys can be able to see these pictures of what good things are happening. Because again, I don't want to make it all about the bad things, but we gotta know what's going on. It's got to be said. It's got to be done. All right. So that ends it for what's going on. I mean, if you guys want to know more about the supply chain, I mean, there are dozens of articles out there and other things. I mean, I was, and the way inflation is going. I mean, I was listening to a video on the way because, I'm driving back and forth between different places, and I was listening to a video about a guy who, born in the 80s, and his dad was, a restaurant manager in the 80s. He was making pretty darn good money, and then when this kid went to college around in the 90s. Early 2000s, he was working at Perkins and making at least $100 in tips on a Saturday, and would fill up his car for $14, buy a whole meal at Taco Bell for $3, 3 burritos, a taco, and a drink, and have a heck of a lot more money left over, and be able to pay his rent and all that on a low wage job, low wage back then. And now forget working in a restaurant now. Because the wages have not increased. Okay, so there needs to be a way for wages to increase. That's by bringing in more high-skilled, blue-collar labor in this country. All right, Ruben, anything to add before we go to the audience?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. So, what did you say? Like, you cut out last minute. I couldn't hear it.
Anything you'd like to bring into the audience before we get anything you'd like to bring in before we get into the audience?
Infrastructure. I mean, I can tell you this about, Belgian infrastructure. Wonder is like in 1950s we got heavily invested in ports, so now we have the bigger concentration of ports than China. So if we would go face up with China, we have a bigger concentration of ports of high capacity than China. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What else could be added? Well, infrastructure is what your country relies on. So, in case of extreme debt, they always sell everything else off, and infrastructure is always the last thing you're gonna sell off. So if you want, financial and especially on your paper, you want some reliability and when you keep your country safe, I would say just build the train lines. What's the worst thing that can happen? You have better infrastructure. That's the worst thing that's gonna happen. Literally,
yeah.
You're only gonna get better infrastructure. That's the downside.
That's the thing. Yeah, we need physical infrastructure because that again, having interest building up it's not real, right? I don't know. I think there was a saint or something like this. It's a very terrible business, which is what the Federal Reserve does, and most of these banks do. It is I don't know. I think it was it Saint Thomas or Aquinas? I'm not quite sure, but he says probably like the worst business, the most destructive thing for a nation is to rubbing together two pennies and then coming out with a third penny, coming out, and that's basically what this economy is doing. Is that we're just bringing ourselves into debt, but we have nothing physical to show for it. There is nothing that the people are getting to say that, oh yeah, we own this. The only thing we own is an extreme amount of debt and really nothing to show for it, which is quite terrible. All right, so we have two people in the audience. And again, anybody who is in the live chat, you're more than welcome to do. Actually, before we get in the audience, let's see some questions, and then go from there, and then we'll go get into the audience. Again, I'm opening it up for anybody if you are in the chat right now. Discord link is in the description below. Go ahead and click that, join on in, and join us in the Spooky Scary Supply Lines live stream. Join us in there, and we'll go there. All right. Let's see some questions over here before we get into the audience. Again, for people in the audience, we'll get to you real soon. We're just trying to make sure we have enough talking points to get to, and maybe this will bring in some talking points for you guys. What year is Virgin Trains USA? Brightline is opening up soon. We'll be talking about Brightline a lot later on, but 2023, early 2023.
What is Virgin Trains USA? Never.
Yeah. Oh, Virgin Trains USA. Oh,
Never.
Man, never. I forgot. Yeah, Virgin Trains is gone. It's Brightline now. Yeah, that was a brain fart on my end, guys. Apologies. Yeah, Brightline. Virgin Trains is gone. And again, I haven't heard anything what's going on with Virgin Trains or what's going on with Virgin. The Virgin Walk is exactly what's going on. Let's see. Brightline, Texas Central Railway, Amtrak passenger rail in places that have not quite had it for a while. Not quite sure what that's in context to. Grambo, hello Demetrius. Just got here in time. Anything that I missed? I'm not quite sure when when you put that chat there, Grambo. But yeah, we're just blackpilling the rest of the audience, I guess, on how messed up this country is going to be if the supply chain problems are going to extend on to 2023. I mean, there was some like polls that come up, asking people, when is this collapse going to happen, right? And, some people are saying 1 to 3 months. I guess the majority of people in this poll, which are probably not experts, but hey, some people can feel it in the air tonight. Feel it calling in the air tonight. Whoa. But,
Oh Lord.
yeah, but I don't know. I've been saying this is going to be, something really bad for the United States. I've been saying things are going to fall apart at some point or another. I wouldn't have suggested it was going to be like this, but it's now a matter of when, not if. If anybody's saying if is silly, stupid, they deserve a slap across the face, proverbial slap across the face. Don't actually slap someone unless you really need to wake them up, but it's what it is. I guess some people will say that that's it's cruel and unusual punishment. Oh look, my dad is here. Florida governor offers state ports to help end supply chain crisis. No shortage here. Yeah, some states are having it better than others. Some are having it worse than others. And Florida does actually have a pretty robust supply chain, and they're doing better. Funny enough, of all the states, the one that's going to do better is going to be Florida because they're building themselves infrastructure, and a lot of people are moving over there. Now, there's good and bad to that. You're having a lot of people moving into Florida, and the infrastructure is nowhere near ready to take that capacity of people, but it's what it is. All right, so let's go. We've had enough in the chat over here. Let's go ahead into the audience. So Joachim, our resident roller coaster fan. Let's see if I can bring him in over here. I don't know why my right click is not working on Discord. Give me just 1 second. What is going on here? There we are.
All right, can't wait for Joachim.
Okay, invite to speak. There we go. All right, Joachim, you are on board. Welcome aboard.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
So yeah, I did.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I had, of course, I live in the Netherlands, and I've had a bit of an observation recently, and that is in the Netherlands we really have just on our railways we have like 2 levels of service. We have a intercity or fast train. We call that it's a sneltrein, and we have a stoptrein or a stopping train, which is a train that stops like at every station, and the fast train stops just at the main city, at the main station of the cities. What I think is really interesting is when I look at most commuter railroads in the United States, is I don't really see any of that fast train like service, and mostly just trains that stop at every stop. And how do you think that affects the service? And to me it really just seems like it's just slows down most commutes or trips for everyone.
Yeah, having that multi-tiered system, that's important, and because you have that available, it frees up having your right of ways for, if you have to have passengers, and the passenger rail system, if it gets clogged up, is not going to interfere with freight trains, or is not going to interfere with slower commuter lines, etc. So having that sort of separation so make things work. Unfortunately, in the United States, we don't have that system in many places, which is why Amtrak, the Acela line, not just because the infrastructure is very bad. I mean, we all know this. Not because the infrastructure is... on top of the infrastructure falling apart in the Northeast Corridor, the Acela is also running into slower commuter-type Amtrak trains in between there. So it can never really get up to full speed. In Japan, they've done this. The Shinkansen is its own separate line. And there's no way for other commuter rail to get on that. It's impossible because, well, it's not impossible. It's going to create a complete mess because the narrow gauge rail lines are where the commuter rails run on. And then the Shinkansens run on their own standard gauge lines. And then there's also the freight rail lines in Japan. Again, I just bring that system up over and over again because A, I went to Japan, B, I've done the most research on that, and C, it's not the United States where things are kind of falling apart.
Yeah, I've actually. Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. What I also just thought about is, like, we all love to complain about Amtrak and how bad it is, but if you ask anyone here in the Netherlands, we all love to complain about the NS or the Nederlandse spoorwegen about how terrible that is. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's like first world problems, man. you're complaining about that, you know. Come take a day in our shoes over here. You'll be stuck here for 8 hours for a delay.
Yeah.
And I'm complaining about a 15-minute delay, or I'm having to get on another train because a freight train is stuck in a tunnel.
I'd love to complain about a 2-minute or 15-minute delay. That would be the day that we know things are doing well.
Yeah, that literally happened to me last week. Like, I went to school and there is a tunnel in a city, and a freight train. Like, freight trains in the Netherlands are like really rare. Like, almost no freight trains ride on the normal tracks because we have so many passenger trains that there's almost no room.
Right.
So it's really great that one gets stuck in a tunnel, which
I mean, that's pretty interesting. All right, Demetrius, I need to have a little bit of Benelux lore right now, but so when you compare Belgium and Netherlands together, Netherlands like this lawful, good characters. Like, okay, we need to separate things, and then you have Belgium is basically just pure anarchy. It's like stuck between Netherlands and USA. It's like Netherlands like, okay, we need to have separate train lines from port to port for freight, and then you have Belgium like, yeah, with this very buzzy main line, let's throw some freight into it. Let's see what happens, you know? So you have these train lines where every 2-3 minutes you either have freight passing by or some passenger trains. So it's pure anarchy. So
Yeah.
we Belgians complain about the railroads. We're like, oh my god, and Dutch railroads are so good. And then you have like Dutch people going like, damn, our railroads are pretty bad.
Yeah, those darned tulip merchants.
I mean, Ilfam, can I quickly add something to that?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually when I took Metro a few times in US, it was pretty interesting what you said. Like, you have these stopping services, but
Yeah.
then now and then you have a few of these very false services that are hidden between the timetables. So it's pretty confusing why they just don't advertise them or put like separate categories or even distinct their services.
No.
I think the only line in USA where you have like this split between Sprinter service and IC
City.
service, yeah, in cities is ICs is basically Northeast Corridor. That's where you have that kind of split.
You have the Northeast East Regional and you have the Excella, but
Yeah.
and you also
But-
have, of course, the local railroads, which run an even more local service.
Yeah, that's where you can actually see kind of the split, kind of.
And yeah, and also a thing what I thought about, and it's a bit of a discussion I had with someone else here about the infrastructure in the Netherlands and how we actually also kind of underbuilt for what we need. Because there's a railway between Rotterdam and The Hague, and that's currently it's partly upgraded to 4 tracks, but there's still a section of which is just two tracks, and the plan has always been like to upgrade it all to 4 tracks, but a few years ago they had an updated plan and they said yes, some upgraded signals are enough for that part of the track. So, which is of course not really that practical, because if you have just the slightest of delays or a train gets stuck, you're into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. All right. Well, Joachim, anything else to say?
Nah, not really. I think I've had about everything.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on board, man. We appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Ciao.
Alrighty. So, next in the audience is our good friend down South Carolina, David Mitchell. You are invited on board.
1, 2, 3, go! And Dave
On
the plane for crazy customers.
Oh boy.
Come, David.
Hold it. Duct tape on a plane for crazy customers.
Hey, Emo.
Hey, man.
What's up, man?
We had to do that.
Yeah.
I know. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Feeling a little better because last Friday we had to bury our dog.
Oh, my condolences, man.
Hey, and sorry for what happened to Holly.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Hey, well, I can actually fitly say my mom is a COVID survivor.
Oh, good.
And
She'll probably be home in 2 weeks from now at the beginning of next month.
and
That's good to
also
hear.
My aunt's partner is also a COVID survivor before your mom, David.
Oh, speaking of that, I sent you about Eureka, California, and what's going on there.
Okay.
A coal company is talking about building the Northwest Coast Railroad to Eureka, California. A coal company. I'm dedicated coal, but I hate to say it, but I think this should be something that helps bring freight back into Eureka, California, because they got a lot of businesses there. Also, they got a shipping port that can be rebuilt, you know?
Right.
They got a big shipping port that they have not used since the 90s, since the line was abandoned from a nasty flood, you know?
Right.
And the person who owned the rail line is trying to stop the company from buying the tracks and rebuild them. And he's trying to turn it into what we call the Great Redwood Trail, a rail to trail, which I'm calling that Redwood Trail a boondoggle, a disaster, you know?
Yeah, I remember you talking about this before.
Yeah, dude who, like, you got the thing I sent you? Talking about this?
Let me see if I can check and see if I do have that. Again, I've been... Discord's been giving me a whole big spiel for some reason because it for some reason Discord banned me for I don't know what. And I said, look, I haven't done anything. You can check my history. I just talk about train. I'm just a train meme merchant. That's all I do, and talk about trains. And they say, oops, sorry, we apologize and bring you back onto there. And at least I didn't lose my account. But let me see. Was this Impossible Railway gets another chance? No, that's not that article. If you want to send me the article, you're free to go ahead and.
Okay, let me. I probably already sent it to you. 1 minute. What? Because what it happening, it's a big boondoggle. Because the people who are trying to stop the rail line from being rebuilt are pretty bad, you know? And I actually scroll up. It's North Coast. It's the North Coast one, you know?
Okay, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, because it was kind of breaking in and out there. Yeah, again, if you want to share the article, you're more than welcome to. But in the meantime,
I'll be resending it to you right now, so
yeah,
you should be getting it in a minute. But
sure thing.
What happening is the people who own the line are actually trying to stop it from being rebuilt.
Right.
And they are making the excuse saying the Eel River, which is the Eel River goes along the North Coast right of way, you know? The
right.
Northwest. Like, I just sent you it, Dimitri.
I got it. I'm taking the article right now and putting it on board.
Like, the people who are trying to stop the rail line from being rebuilt are using the Eel River.
Okay, so, alright, so for those of you who aren't familiar, this is what David is talking about. North Coast lawmakers rally against plan to ship coal out of Humboldt Bay via rail. NCRA estimates $2 billion needed to restore the north-south rail line. So let me see, North Coast Rail. Lawmakers have vowed to block a secretive plan to restore an abandoned stretch of defunct North Coast Railroad to export coal overseas from Montana, Utah, and Wyoming through the port of Humboldt Bay. State Senator Mike McGuire, Democrat from Harrodsburg, called the proposed plan one of the largest environmental threats the North Coast has seen in decades. California banned coal-fired plants for a good reason, McGuire said in a prepared statement. Coal is the dirtiest and most damaging source of energy out there. It's the number one cause of global warming. It's the number one contributor to our climate crisis. The people of the North Coast won't stand for this. We rallied against big oil to protect our coast from offshore drilling and won, and we will fight against big coal. So that's a very typical Democrat talking point. Again, but they won't push for nuclear energy. So
Exactly. Heck, I'm calling the people who made the article and the people who are trying to adopt it. I'm calling them dumbasses.
Yeah. Again, I understand where the language is coming from, but again, we're trying to keep it as YouTube friendly as possible. That it's what it is. Again, should we be using coal for energy? I think there's better ways to use energy other than coal, but I mean it's probably the most used amount of energy in the majority of the United States still uses coal.
Now here's the dirty little secret: the one who owned the line and the one who had trying to adopt the line from being rebuilt, he got a sketchy history. The dude got a sketchy history. You hear me?
Yeah. This is something that kind of I would say I understand where you're coming from, David. This is something that sort of deserves its own sort of thing. So I mean, if you want to send me more articles and we can cover it next time, that's perfectly good, man. So we're trying to keep a schedule here. I understand what you're trying to come out with. Trying to be as respectful as possible. We're trying to keep things on point over here. Anything?
I actually did a live stream on this too about a week ago.
If you wanna link it in the chat, you're free to go ahead. If anybody's interested in David talking more about this, because again, I'm pretty sure you're much more of a subject matter expert on this than I am. This is, I've only heard little snippets of this. I'm not too familiar with it, but you seem to have a better grasp on it than I do.
Because the Eel River is already polluted by drug farms.
Yeah, I could imagine that, David. I understand. Just if you want to, just you can link it here in the chat. I'll link this. Let me link this article in the chat for those of you guys who are interested in looking at that. But if there's anything any of you want to say about what we've talked about in terms of the supply chain issues or anything you want to tie in with this?
Oh yeah, but the other thing I'm going to bring up, the port of Eureka, the area. If they rebuild that for shipping container and they actually rebuild it line, they can actually solve that problem of what they're having in LA. Because if they were smart enough, they would rebuild that port, rebuild the tracks, and have all those containers just head up to Eureka. You're
right. Yeah.
Because the Eureka port is big enough for about 20 container ships. It's big enough for it.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Like, Humboldt Bay is big enough where they can bring in those container ships. Instead of sending them to LA, they can actually send them to Eureka, California.
Right.
And this track right here, even though it's abandoned, if they rebuild it, make everything high enough for a double stack intermodal, they can actually bring intermodal in that way, like have 4 to 5 trains per day.
Exactly. That's a very good point you brought up. Yeah, it doesn't have to be for coal. Having this available here to go ahead and move shipping containers from, the port would alleviate a lot of that.
What I brought up earlier, the dude who trying to adopt it know that.
Exactly.
And he got some illegal shit on him. Reason why he want to turn that into a trail, because there are a lot of illegal drug farms up there, and he probably is making money that way.
Okay, yeah, that could be. Look, I understand, and I know that there's a lot of theories that could be tied together and it could make logical sense. Again, I'm not too familiar with it. I don't doubt it, because things like that have happened before. But again, if you want to cover it and do all that yourself, you're more than welcome to go ahead and link this up in the chat so people can know about it, because that's pretty interesting. Or if you have any evidence of that and linking to their, that will make sense.
Well, there was them dead giveaway back a month ago on Google Maps when I was looking at the area along the Eel River, and I noted that it was heavily polluted with stuff that come from drug farms.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Again, if you see dead animals, polluted waterways, or distributed waterways, redistributed waterways into drug farms, that's very much signs of illegal, like marijuana farming, drug farming. I mean, there were conservation officers in California that were dealing with this stuff, and was reading some of their books.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty interesting. But again, David, David.
Sorry.
I appreciate it, man. I thank you for coming on. We're running low on time over here. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you have time at the end of the stream, I will get back on, man.
Yeah, I'll try and see, because probably after the stream I'm gonna be off to get some other things done. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, man.
All right.
Anytime.
God bless and take care.
You too.
Alrighty. So there you go, guys. What's going on over in North Coast? So that's something pretty interesting to come up with. And again, if you guys have any articles or anything you want me to cover, feel free to. All right. So let's go into the next turn of stories we're gonna cover over here. I think this is it. Nope, it's not. That's not the right slideshow. Let's go ahead and bring up this one. That should work. Okay, so there was an article that came out in this month's edition of Trains Magazine. For those of you who don't have Trains Magazine, we're not sponsored by them or anything like that. I've been receiving Trains Magazine. It's pretty good to go ahead and look about what's going on in the whole industry as a whole in terms of freight. A lot of articles on PCR and other things like that. Here on page 10, there's Amtrak's pandemic recovery. So here you go. You can see the double page photo over here of Amtrak, I believe. Yeah, this is the Texas Eagle in San Antonio. So this is called Coming Back, Story and Photos by Bob Johnston, and we have I scanned it over here so you guys can follow along and see it. And again, we're covering things on a commentary basis, so it doesn't in conflict with any copyright laws. We're just going over it. And again, it's not the whole article or anything like that. If you guys want to, pick up a Trains magazine somewhere, you're free to go ahead and do all that. But yeah, so here we are. You got the last one. Advised Amtrak reservation agent explaining why a month in advance of an early June trip, the company was charging $793 for a Houston-Los Angeles roomette on Amtrak Sunset Limited. What about a roomette in the transition sleepers? I asked. We aren't running that car, the agent asked. So yeah, this is and it's kind of the problem with Amtrak. A lot of people have complained, and these are valid complaints, that Amtrak is quite expensive for what you're getting out of Amtrak. Some tickets can run hundreds of dollars, whereas you can, hundreds of dollars to be kind of stuck for 8 hours. Yeah, it's a better trip, but if you're running on time, it's not really. It doesn't really make sense, right? Where for a fraction of that, for $90, you can take a comparable flight. Yeah, you'll be crunched in for an hour or two, and have to deal with the airlines and the airports, etc., and transit back and forth. But that's kind of the issue in this country, where in areas where trains and passenger rail should be completely owning the ride market share in that area, they're not, because Amtrak runs slow. Okay, for whatever reasons, for the myriad of reasons that we already know, Amtrak does not provide a better service than the alternatives, which is why hence people drive and people fly. And that's, again, very much an economy that's kept that way to keep Amtrak down, more necessarily to prop up airlines and to prop up the automobile industry. Okay, they're much bigger lobbyists. They have bigger dogs in play in this fight than Amtrak does. Amtrak probably has a little chihuahua, versus the, these steroided pit bulls that the airlines are running against it. That doesn't turn out well, as you can imagine. A little teacup chihuahua that Amtrak is lobbying power wise compared to the mammoth roided pit bull of the two roided pit bulls, because you have the automobile industry and the airline industry. Yeah, that doesn't turn out well. So at least the good things over here, the dining car does return to Amtrak, and it has returned. So the food on here, it looks okay. I mean, this is, comparable for what you would see on Amtrak. This is this garlic shrimp and andouille sausage salad on the city of New Orleans. Like that Johnny Cash song. Good morning, America, how are you? So there you are. You got your Cajun food on there. During the pandemic, the meal in a bowl spread system-wide, its portability and assets. So this is very similar to what Amtrak has always put about. And again, I'm pretty picky about the food, because I like the food. I like food, and I want the experience on the train to be a very nice foodie experience. The lobster appetizer doesn't look half bad. Food specialist Brian Garouge, I believe that's how you pronounce that name, completes presentation of a lobster appetizer. The new traditional dining item proved popular enough to also be added to the Acela first class menu. Okay, so providing a service at least on top of everything in Amtrak is what makes it worth it, right? Because unfortunately, if you don't have the speed, well, provide something else. Now, of course, you have on another bunch of major lines, like in France, on the TGV or the Eurostar, they provide a very very good meal for first class. If you guys have seen the video, if you look up, it's a very popular video on YouTube, I believe by C51. I believe that's what, if I recall, that's his name. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Yeah, him.
I have to correct you a little bit about the dinner service. On the refurbished Thalys trains, Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam.
Sure.
They scrapped the restaurant core.
They did.
They put in vending machines.
Ah, well,
economics.
Yeah, that's what it is. But I mean, look, if you're on the Thalys, it's not going to take that long to get from point A to point B. So it's kind of similar to what Japan does. I mean, they don't really give you service unless you're in the green car. But on the rest, everybody brings their own food, or whenever the carts come back and forth on some cars, they do give you food. But on most, it's not a classical experience like on most trains. I know the Eurostar definitely still does that in some high-end TGV trains, and other trains like in Germany, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, still have first-class dining services or at-your-seat dining services, or a combination of that.
Well, and ECE, Intercity Express, trust me, their dining service the dining cars are just like the older generation of AC has like this dome in it, and modern. It's pretty good. Well, let's get back on the article. I'm sidetracking here.
Yeah, no worries, man. Hey, if you want to share, I mean, if you guys are interested in what Ruben has to share, put it in the chat. We'll talk about that. So here's the long distance performance versus plan. So back in November of 2020, the ridership in thousands, revenue in millions. Let me see if I can zoom into that so you guys can be able to see that a bit more. Let me just check my OBS monitor to make sure that I'm not zooming in too much. Let me see if I can move that a bit over here so you guys can see that. Okay. Okie dokie. Here we are. Okay, perfect. Oh, as good as it's going to get. All right, so ridership in thousands. Predicted 77,000 passengers, and the actual they did 109,000 passengers, so that's a 41% increase from what they were expecting, which is pretty good. So Amtrak has been doing a little better than they have predicted. They have been rebounding a lot better, as you can see. So the revenue in millions, they were predicting 9.5 million in revenue. They actually got 15.9 million in revenue. So Amtrak is having a pretty good time. So that was November 2020. You can see January 2021, very good, a 64% increase in what they predicted for ridership, and a 73% increase in what they predicted for revenue. And then in May 2021, I guess this is the last statistics that they have available. Again, 100% increase in what they expected. So they're getting a lot more people. Again, compared to what Amtrak was doing, this is still about 50%, 50, 40, 60% around that area of what Amtrak was actually doing. Again, I don't have a quick reference over here to go ahead and compare that to 2019 numbers. But as you can see, they're rebounding quite well enough than they're predicting. 118% increase in predicted revenue, where they're expecting $14.2 million in revenue for the month of May. They actually made $30.9 million in revenue. And again, this is just the long distance trains. As you can see, even though they have reduced capacity, they're still running it through. All right, let me see if I can zoom out, and then will it go to the next one? Yeah, here we go. All right. So what's the good thing about Amtrak compared to airlines? Well, of course, you can walk around. You got enough space. You can go ahead and look out. Here's the Coast Starlight, looking along the Pacific coast, including the segment north of Santa Barbara, California, June 13th, 2021. And here's the thing. Look, coach legroom far outstrips that available on airplanes and buses. Through May, even more space was available as Amtrak limited sales to 50% of available capacity. And this is what kind of really ticks me off, is that Amtrak has to do this due to the DOT and TSA laws of reduced capacity and seating regulations for the virus. But on airlines, it's completely packed and full. And I got to show you guys pictures at some point. I got to look at my phone again. I don't know how many times I've been on a plane and it's completely packed, especially on budget airlines. They're completely packed in. They make people wear. And again, I know some of you don't think that this whole thing is real, or there's some people that think it's overblown, and there's some people that think it's the worst thing ever and it's going to kill us all, and there's some people that think, well, it's it's what it is. I'm going to tell you just the reality of what we're seeing. It's hypocritical to say that Amtrak and other commuter rail lines and other lines like buses and etc. and other transit lines have to go ahead and do this sort of designated seating while on an airplane in a packed area. I've said this over and over again. In a packed area for hours at a time where you can't really move, to have people there stuck like still sardines. And then look, if I were to bring this on an airline, even though this is an N100 filter and everything, okay? So if I were to bring this on an airline, they say you can't. Why? Oh, because it's exhaling the air out and you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. Or a respirator, an N95 respirator, a respirator mask. And then they'll offer you the little paper mask, which doesn't do anything. That's ridiculous, okay? This is supposedly the most dangerous virus in the world to some of these people. And people go in with hazmat suits and stuff like that in some hospitals, but on a packed sardine can with 200 or so people on an airline, or 193 on a 737, you gotta wear the little the cloth mask or the paper mask, or this is just hypocritical and BS. If you're gonna go ahead and follow the laws, everyone should be following it across the board. You can't just go ahead and switch it back and forth like that. All right. So let me see. So initially, Amtrak's decision to restrict sales to 50% of capacity to comply with health protocols. Only Amtrak. So Amtrak has to run as a private company, but they, we can't give them money because they have to run as a private company. This is what kind of sickens me about the Republicans, because they're hypocrites too. The Democrats as well, because the Democrats say that we love Amtrak, and then they'll give Amtrak, little bits of money here and there. They're not really advocates. Nobody's really an advocate for Amtrak. Half the time the Democrats backstab Amtrak and don't really help them out. They just love using it as a photo prop. Honestly, half the time. But all this, they can have a bipartisan bill and everybody can vote on to give $50 billion to the airlines, but Amtrak gets a paltry sum, and they're very lucky, if this bill passes, to get $66 billion, which they'll probably never get anything like that again. If this passes, I haven't really kept up with the infrastructure bill. I would have heard if it's passed, probably for what I go around online, but this is what's going on.
They could have surely added at least $3 more billion to that bill. That would have been nice.
Honestly, Amtrak probably should get $100 billion, if not more, to cover all the bases. And by that, I mean complete, completely giving themselves their own infrastructure in some long distance lines, fixing up completely the Northeast Corridor, and having a complete timeline for when that's going to get done, and what to expect. No ridership numbers, no none of that. We know what's going to happen. Predicting that it has to reach this, because we know what happens in all these predictions. Everybody goes ahead and overestimates. Everybody does it. Brightline has done it too. Even though Brightline is doing pretty well, or will be doing pretty well, but nothing like that. Just go ahead and say, this is our plan to go ahead and revamp the Northeast Corridor. We're going to have trains that, reach 186 miles an hour or 300 kilometers an hour throughout the full stretch over here in its own separated lines. We're going to fix these major points first. This will be phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. They don't have plans like that. They don't write that in bills, because if they actually cared and they actually were going to do that and wanted the money to work, they would do that. Not go ahead and spend money, $30 trillion in debt, and we have nothing at all to show for it. Nothing. Zero. You lose. Good day, sir. That's my Willy Wonka impression there. That kind of scared me as a kid, I would say, for, just off topic, for a Halloween film. I would say, if put in the right context, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is kind of scary. It's just basically, the 7 deadly sins for children, in a sense, of, what you shouldn't do. Like gluttony and greed and that type of stuff. It's a good lesson for kids, honestly, and it definitely problems that nobody has really taken that film to heart, honestly, because we're still dealing with that sort of stuff. But hey, it's what it is. So how's patronage affected? Consider Train's analysis of 6 months of Texas Eagle data with only one Superliner coach and a coach bag car south of St. Louis. The train had numerous sellouts between Little Rock, Arkansas, and St. Louis, Missouri, and even between Dallas and the next stop to East Mineola, Texas. Even when a St. Louis Chicago coach is added, sold out condition days before departure preclude additional ticket sales for longer trips. So they're actually catching up pretty well, which goes to show you, again, there is demand for passenger rail. However, the technology and the service on passenger rail needs to catch up to the level of demand for that. And that is the issue why Amtrak, it needs to catch up to that. Because this is what people are expecting out of trains, especially when you look at the rest of the world. And this is where Amtrak is. So they need to level the gap. They need to close that gap in order to make Amtrak a better alternative. Because it's... again, the alternative to trains, the alternative to airlines and automobiles is up over here, okay? They're not going to come down to Amtrak's level. Amtrak needs to come up there, okay? So they're going to have to go ahead and give that little teacup chihuahua some performance-enhancing drugs if it wants to catch up with those pit bulls, or ditch, even better. This is the problem, because that's what Amtrak will do. Actually, let's take it this way. That's the problem. You can give as many steroids you want to that little chihuahua lobbyist. It ain't going to do anything. Amtrak needs to ditch that and get a frickin' Mastiff in order to fight off these roided pit bulls, lobbyists that, the airlines have. Okay? And they got to fight like one, or either bark like one. Okay? Get that chihuahua and give it some steroids so it's and don't neuter it, and then its cojones will drop, and then it will really make it will really bark and get some money for Amtrak. So you can see over here the rankings of overnight trains, of lounge space, of dining quality, and you can see the Coast Starlight, the Empire Builder. In terms, this is factors on a 1 to 5 scale of. According to this guy, Bob Johnston, who wrote the articles, because he's written on all of them. He's saying the Coast Starlight is probably the best in terms of lounge space, dining quality, scenery, sleeper comfort, coach capacity, and on-time performance. The only one of 4 of on-time performance is the Auto Train. And again, the Auto Train, this is all tied for second place for the Empire Building California Zephyr. Again, Empire Builder, California Zephyr, pretty similar, point A to point B. But the Auto Train is Amtrak's, outside of the Northeast Corridor, is Amtrak's biggest moneymaker. and you can see where it's tied for on-time performance a 4. Okay, so that's almost 5. So that's very good for Amtrak. And again, maybe when they say a 4, maybe it's an hour late, and Amtrak will still call that on time. But it's still pretty good, right? The worst what I see here in on-time performance is the Crescent Line, and a 0 for lounge space, a 1 for dining quality, a 2 for scenery, a 5 for sleeper comfort. So at least you can get to sleep, I guess. 1 for coach capacity and 1 for on-time performance. And the Texas Eagle is all the way down here at the bottom. So if you guys are planning a trip, here's a reference.
I mean, I've seen some very interesting numbers here, like just found randomly in Facebook group called Street Course Today. But when we're talking about the other terrain, even though the ridership during a certain crisis fell 16%, revenue went up with 12%.
Whew. Yeah.
So even though when less people were using it, it was still making more money.
Exactly.
And long distance trains, it's gonna get more interesting. Even though ridership fell with 51%, long distance the revenue only fell with 33%, and whilst the Northeast Corridor fell with 65% of ridership, it fell with 74% in revenue.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And again, these things correlate, guys. You offer better service, you get more people on there, you make more money. That's how it should work. Okay. You have a product. Look, this is how fair it should be, right? You have a product. Okay, your time on labor and whatnot. You have a fair price for it. Okay, or your service. All right, and that's what you charge. Okay, you don't go over for what your labor should cost. You don't try to overpay or over, because you have, like, for example, like, phones. Okay, these phones, honestly, for what they cost in terms of materials, well, before the chip crisis, how many more crises are we going through? But anyway, let's say, for example, because I keep bringing it up because it's right next to me. Okay, so these phones, for example, in terms of material, maybe you're talking about, and it's like let's say a flagship phone that costs like $1,000, right? Or it shouldn't cost $1,000. Materials wise, it costs $100, if not less than that. And then labor-wise, it's done in a sweatshop somewhere. So maybe $50 added onto that in terms of labor costs. And then maybe you want to add machinery, cost for the infrastructure around, assets, etc., labor, space, all that combined together. Maybe you're talking about a fair price of $300, $400, not $1,000. All right, that's ridiculous. All right. Now, again, inflation and everything else that we're dealing with, and all this crazy clown world dystopia, cyberpunk dystopia that we're living in, and it's not a fun cyberpunk dystopia at all. Not nobody's jumping around in legs or anything like that, like mechanical legs, or they have their waifu bots or whatever, which is kind of degenerate anyway. When that happens, that's going to create a big problem. I can say that, but that's an off-topic thing. But anyway, as you can see, you offer better service. Again, TLDR, offer better service, you get more people. Okay, that's what it is. And yeah, there's less equipment because there's less people on Amtrak trains. And again, I've read through this. Here we go. Nevertheless, the company is making a $28 million multi-year customer experience investment by upgrading Superliner coach seats, carpeting, and curtains, sightseer lounge interiors, sleeping car bedding and towels, and dining car furnishings, which is well needed. And if you guys have seen the picture in the previous stream that we've done, we've seen the pictures. It looks a lot better. Okay, and hopefully they do the bathrooms a heck of a lot better, which it seems like they are, because those bathrooms on Amtrak, the current ones now, I've already complained about it so many times. You can check out the Amtrak rant that I have in the, I think that was done in 2017. It seems like a whole world away. It's almost 5 years ago. But it hasn't really changed. That's the thing about Amtrak. It's kind of timeless in the wrong aspect that you want to call it timeless. We're not talking about a Roman monument or something like the old Penn Station is timeless. or some older, Art Deco stations. It's kind of timeless in the 1970s oil crisis car that your dad bought, and it's got like 90 horsepower out of an 8-liter V8, and it sucks. That kind of timeless. Yeah, but and again, let's see. So this is to welcome new members of the House and Senate committees considering oversight changes as part of the upcoming Amtrak reauthorization, which is part of the infrastructure bill. For the past 50 years, the nation's lawmakers and green eye-shaped budget busybodies have attempted any number of ways to micromanage Amtrak. The efforts have ranged from U.S. Representative John Mika's misguided efforts to make all food service pay for itself. He apparently never ate a free hotel breakfast. Well, I mean, you kind of do pay for the hotel breakfast. It's not free. I don't know who made this article, but that was a pretty mid-wit comment there. Honestly, really. Two objectives that would somehow coerce profitability and make the company perform like a business. I mean, look, if you want to bring in a much better, I would say, allegory to this or comparison, the airlines. Honestly, that is the easiest below-the-belt punch that you can be able to make and get away with it with nobody even caring or wanting to do anything about that. That's honestly really hotels. Come on. Then again, I don't know how. I haven't really looked into it. Maybe there's a hotel lobby that does get plenty in tax credits and funding from our taxpayer dollars. Well, printed money, because our taxpayer dollars are only funding the interest payments to the Federal Reserve, like we said last week. So here's some more information on that. So again, you guys want to look at the article, you can, here's a tip. You can pause in the back of the video and go ahead and read this for yourself. Again, we've done commentary on it, so it's fair use, 1976, U.S. Code fair use, so, it's good. But if you guys want, the whole thing, here you go, Trains Magazine, look at that and go through there. All right, so you guys have seen what's going on with Amtrak. Things are looking better with Amtrak. That's a good thing. So we're going to look at the chat. We're going to go through the audience. For those who have not spoken, you will be free to speak. And again, we're trying to keep things on time. I'm keeping track of time here on my trusty Casio watch. So we're trying to keep things 5 minutes. Try to keep things succinct, to the point, and try to keep it on topic, okay? If you want to bring up something, perfectly fine. I would suggest you try to bring in topic first with what we're talking about and what's going on, and then go from there. So that's how we're going to run things. So let's look in the chat over here on YouTube and see what's going on over here and see some of the comments, some of the questions, some answers. Let's see here. Okay, my brother Darius over here. The food on board is really luxurious, and the cabin is just pompous but expensive. I don't know why you say the cabin is it's quite the opposite of pompous. It's not like a European cabin or anything like that, or an old school American style cabin. Let's see over here. Tyrone W. Virginia Amtrak lines are almost at pre-pandemic levels, by the way. All right, so things are going good. And again, I would say the reason why in Virginia, a lot of that is more commuter traffic into the DC area. So definitely, and as things are starting to get back into order, you would probably see some of that back. When we're going to see pre-pandemic levels or well, I don't know if YouTube is going to cut that out or hit me for that, but when we're going to see things kind of go back to a normal, say, I don't know. Again, we seen that article where they said 2023 for supply chain. And again, these are experts. Take things with what you will. As some experts have said, like that those some expert materials saying that a certain candidate was going to win with a 99.1% chance back in a certain year. That those are the experts, guys. So you kind of have to take things at face value and look at it logically and come to things. Could we see 2023? I don't know. Maybe there won't be supply chains happening in 2023. I don't know. So we'll see. Let's see, anybody else over here? Anything you see, Ruben, that you see interesting in the chat? I don't know if you're following it.
I mean, I was looking at a question like, how does Amtrak compare to SNCF services? that's going to be a difficult one to respond, as I've never taken the full Amtrak experience. What can I say from short distance route like Chicago, Milwaukee? I'd say they're pretty similar. Yeah, I would say ticketing is a bit more confusing for Amtrak as SNCF. It's just like you just buy a ticket, you don't have to reserve a train or something like that. You just buy a ticket, get on board.
Right.
So SNCF service is kind of like taking a metro or a local train. Amtrak, what I've read, seen, heard is that Amtrak is a bit more, I would say, stoic.
Yeah. And that's kind of the difference. Of course, the European services are going to be, it's not fair game to compare Amtrak to that. I mean, that's a whole different world, and a completely different culture at this point in terms of transportation and infrastructure. I mean, there's similarities between the United States and European cultures, of course, because a lot of us came from Europe at some point or another. Most of us here in the United States, at least as it stands for now demographically, but. The thing is that Europe has a different culture in terms of that a lot of older cities, much older cities, a lot more compact. There aren't really suburbs. That doesn't really exist. There's some suburbs in Europe in some places, but there's very much distinction between urban and rural. And cities are far closer together in the entirety of Europe than you see in the United States, where you see pockets of places that are pretty close together, like the Northeast Corridor, like the Midwest, like places in the South, like Florida, like Texas, like California, like the North Pacific. But across most of the majority of the United States, landmass wise, no, there's really not going to be a need for intercontinental or continental high speed rail. That's kind of silly, and most people probably wouldn't take something like that. Let me see. This is a funny comment. Give a Chihuahua steroids and it will probably die. That's from Zachary. Yeah, it probably would. Tyrone, I'm really shocked at Auto Train ridership performance. Yeah, it is pretty good. Let's see here. Let me see. Yeah, I guess that's it for comments over here. Nothing else that I see interesting. You guys, if you want to go ahead and put a comment there, if I see it, I'll probably check it out. All right, so we have people in the audience over here. This will be our third audience over here of questions, and then we'll go into the last third, talking about Bright Line and come to a conclusion. You good to go, Ruben? Time wise?
Yeah, I mean, I will ignore sleeping. Who needs sleep at all? Just, let's go.
Yeah, sleep is overrated. I feel you, man. All right, so
I'm also watching some Bitcoin. I mean, crypto going up and down, so that's keeping me awake.
That will keep a lot of people awake. I know my brother-in-law is very much into crypto right now. I was very big into it back in 2017, and I made a fair amount to get myself moving and whatnot. I'm just going to wait for things to cool down and, before I get back into it. Yes, it will come down at some point. I don't doubt it. It's more of a matter of when at this point, because things just keep going up and down. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, that will keep anybody awake. Okay, so in the audience, we're going to go from left to right, people who have not spoken yet, to give everybody a fair chance. We will go for the three here that have not gone. And remember, guys, 5 minutes each. It is on my watch 21:25, so let's bring on Pro Trainer to speak. So you will have about 5 minutes starting from when you go in. Welcome aboard, Pro Trainer.
One.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. Just want to say hello, Demetrius. Hello, Ruben from
Hey.
halfway across the world. Demetrius, I just want to say, your channel has been awesome. I've been watching you for years now, since the very beginning.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just want to say thank you for providing such awesome content.
Yeah, well, thank you for supporting.
Yeah, of course, no doubt. So, 3 questions.
Sure.
My first one is, have you heard anything about Tri-Rail and connecting it to Miami Central? I'm not sure if, that's any closer. Have they already started conducting PTC tests? Because I know that's something that Brightline had to do first before they could run on the track. So just wondering if you had heard anything about that. Number two. Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah,
Just keep it quick.
let's just stick one question at a time. Yeah, but in terms of Tri-Rail, I have not heard anything since the last time we covered it in the last months. I know they were going ahead and testing for PTC, and they were getting ready to go ahead and get into Miami Central within the next 2 years or so. Apart from that, I haven't really heard much out of there. Probably when I go down to Florida pretty soon, I'll probably see what's going on over there. I can probably look that up. But apart from that, nothing really moving there, apart from Brightline really themselves offering services once the Aventura station and Boca Raton station start.
Okay, and I'll cut my last question to just one more. How do you feel about the routing that Brightline is supposed to take to get to Tampa from Orlando Airport? Because there's kind of like a scuffle going on with that between
Right.
like, the interstate and like the people around like the resort area, and like which route do you feel like it should take?
The route that Brightline wants to take that goes over to Disney Springs and around over there, having that sort of detour in which this other lobbyist group wants to do. I get what they're trying to do to get it down to Universal. However, that would probably be better served by the Sunrail route, or if a Sunrail route could go ahead and connect from the airport, or let's say from downtown Disney or from some other sort. I know we covered it. I don't quite recall the specifics well enough to go ahead and do that. If you can check, I know there's a live stream that we did previous to this that talked a lot more about that. But yeah, I still think that Brightline's first decision, they made a first decision. They partnered with Disney. They've been planning this. It makes perfect sense to go ahead and go along that route to bring it in from downtown Disney, possibly over through Lakeland, because I know they're planning a station in Lakeland, then over to Tampa. That makes perfect sense. I don't see why they should deviate from that.
Yeah, and I did hear something about Sunrail wanting to connect to Orlando Airport, and there's actually like a spur. I think I was watching Roaming Railfan, the one who does the aerial shots and the drone footage.
Oh yeah,
Really good content. Oh my god. But yeah, I think he had showed like a particular clip, and it was like a spur, and he had like in parentheses supposed to connect, Sunrail, But anyways, I just wanted to hop on here real quick. I know you gotta keep it moving, so thank you so much for allowing me to ask questions.
Before you go, can I answer your first question?
Sure.
So I went to Google a bit of things. What can I say about the Miami Central connection? It's a bit quiet, but Brightline has announced that they will make a few surprises in the fourth quarter of this year. So probably in December or November we'll get some interesting news. From what I can see from the Boca Raton Tribune, the Tri-Rail at this point is mostly busy with making the connections. Like Papano Beach, they're making a connection, and they're also working on the connection to Miami Central. So what I assume from reading both articles and a few other articles is that pretty soon there should be a very interesting announcement about a Tri-Rail Miami Central connection.
Right. Because that would be awesome, that they just opened, like a food court in there, and, they've got some retail that's supposed to be coming.
Yeah.
So that would, the more riders that you can bring into this station, the more that it can support the business inside the station and then around the area, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're hoping for.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But thank you guys so much for allowing me to come on and speak.
No,
Really appreciate
thank you for coming on, Pro Trainer. In fact, you got it in just in time, right on the 5-minute dot.
Awesome.
Awesome. Oh, you're awesome, man.
He's a true
Awesome.
Professional.
You're breathtaking.
Oh yeah. Awesome, guys. Have a great night.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Alrighty. So, next invited on board is Renell Reed. You are invited on board. Alright. So, Renell Reed, and whenever you can, I gave you the invite to speak. Oh, there you go. Awesome. Renell is on board.
All right. How are you, Demetrius?
Doing alright. Hanging in there, man. How about you?
Hanging in there. Demetrius.
Yep.
Hope all is well. I'm waiting for all this mask BS to come to an end.
Yeah, it's what it is. Like I can't opine on that on the channel. Whether I'm for it or against it or whatnot. But again, I understand how you feel on that. That's all I can say.
But have you heard? The second bright red has come.
Yes, in fact, we will be covering that in the next set of articles, as I have it up right here on the screen. Arrived back in October 14th of this week, or last week. So yeah, that's pretty cool. We're starting to see a lot more getting done with that.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a correction to what you said earlier. They're actually filling the trains up full capacity now. At least in
where
the
on
train in New York?
On Amtrak?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
At least where I am, they are.
Right. I don't know. And there's some trains that probably will do that. In order to keep things going. It makes sense at this point to go ahead and start allowing for full capacity. That's just my opinion on it, and it just does make sense. All right. Let me see. I'm trying to bring OBS here to make sure. I don't know why OBS is giving me a problem, but anyway, yeah. Any questions or comments?
I thought those trains would be like 7 cars. The new Bright Line trains.
I believe these are probably more on the commuter rail route, because I know that they do have some trains that will have the 7-car trains, and again, probably they'll have some more orders or so coming for Orlando, depending on how much traffic they're expecting and getting. But this is pretty good, and again, they want to be able to keep that tiered service, having a commuter rail service and also having an express service and intercity service. So that makes perfect sense to have that.
So I thought there would be different colors too, like bright yellow, even other ones like.
Yeah, they'll get the other ones in. I'm pretty sure they'll get the other ones in. That's not an issue.
Or even mix trains where it's rainbow colored.
Well, I don't know. That'll probably be too blaring on the eyes. It's already too bright as it is, right? I don't know. Well, yeah, that's again. It just goes to show that because of the demand that Brightline is expecting, because they know it's going to be a popular service as things progress, they're preparing for that to be able to have the amount of capacity and be able to give that service for people that are expecting it. So they're already doing the smart thing. Whereas Amtrak is still kind of playing checkers. That old meme. Brightline is playing 5D chess, and they're already at level. Once things start going, they'll be at level with the alternatives of airlines and automobiles. So that's what they're doing.
They have Democrats and Republicans to deal with in the whole bickering back and forth.
Yeah, that's kind of the sad thing about Amtrak is that because of bipartisan politics, it keeps things behind because you don't have, let's say like a party system where everybody's trying to look out. There's pros and cons to one party system, and there's pros and cons to a very multi-party system like in other countries, because what we have here in the United States is basically a uniparty system masquerading as a two-party system, when we know they don't care. Unfortunately, that's the thing. If we had a constituency of representatives that actually, or at least pretended to actually care, well, that's what they're doing. They're pretending to care, but they're not actually doing it. If they did actually care, Amtrak would get a lot more care to it, and the infrastructure in general would.
You also know Via Rail is getting on board with the venture coaches.
Yeah, up in Canada, yes.
But I still haven't seen what the Amtrak venture sets will look like, besides the Midwest ones.
No, they've come out with different pictures and videos of it. It's out there for what Amtrak is doing, and that's part of the new revamp that Amtrak is pulling up. Yeah, doing across the board. Yeah, they started with the baggage cars, and now they're doing the
Chargers.
the coaches. Yes. Well, they've already come out with the Chargers already in some places, but the coach cars will be coming out from the Venture train sets that Siemens has done also for Brightline, and they're going to be kind of similar to what Brightline has done, except in sort of a more Amtrak kind of color.
Paint scheme and all of that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add, or?
Yeah. One more thing.
Sure.
They say when Brightline opens back up, they're gonna have a fleet of buses and things, and other vehicles.
Right, for Brightline Plus, yeah, they've done, for Lyft and other partnerships, the whole thing they want to do is to make sure they get you door-to-door service, especially in South Florida where that hasn't really been set up, and they know that, South Florida doesn't really have a robust transit system outside of, you would say, Brightline. How is somebody going to get from, let's say, if they live somewhere in Little Havana, how they're going to be able to get to the station over in downtown Miami. And probably most likely thing is they'll have to either drive themselves or take Lyft or take a bus. And a bus is going to take a long time, so having something like Lyft that is bundled into the ticket, so they're not having a surprise charge or anything like that come onto them. It makes things easier, it makes things more streamlined, and it's a lot more relieving for people to be able to just have a one-stop short of ticket to be able to get on Brightline. Let's say, again, you have that, they get on the train, they go to Orlando, and they get to Orlando, and now it's their way to get into the hotel that they're going on. So they have Lyft to go ahead and have somebody right on time come out and meet them at the station and take them to the hotel. So that's covering all the bases, having everything there vertically integrated in order to have people get from point A to their final destination, point B. That's a very fantastic way of running a business and service.
Good. One more thing with the supply chain issues with Florida opening their ports up. I think FEC is going to see a lot of port traffic.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that what FEC is doing right now to revamp, because again, they have a side where the freight trains are going to run, and they have the side where Brightline is going to run, and they've told me, and from what I've heard, that even if they were to be at full capacity for their cargo and freight trains, it's not going to interfere with Brightline because they have it set up in such a way that they'll be able to pass through in the stations, that there won't be any bottlenecks. So they've gotten rid of all the bottlenecks to be able to run both passenger rail and freight rail services at full capacity. That's what they've planned for. And also not just full capacity, but they've revamped all the ties to be concrete ties in every single place, added in PTC, so it's safe, positive train control, so nothing is going to smash into each other or anything like that, so you have crash avoidance. Of course, the only thing that they have to worry about is, unfortunately, the automobiles and the silly low IQ drivers in places like in South Florida, which they have to deal with because they think that they're in the Fast and Furious and they're going to beat the train. That doesn't work.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah. You have in other places in the United States, you'll have Karen, but I guess in South Florida, you have Karina that wants to go ahead and beat the train in her little putt-putt crossover that's severely underpowered, and she can't figure out distance, and then, turns into a pancake. A spicy pancake, you would say. It's again, I'm joking in the way that I'm putting that, and I can kind of say it because I guess I am kind of tan. So yeah, but that's what it is. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for coming on board, man. I appreciate it.
You too.
All right, take care.
All
right. God bless you, man. Okay, so. One last person we will have on here is our friend Eric Gustafsson from, unless he doesn't want to just, okay, oh, there we are. Okay, perfect. All right, just messed up there. All right, so Eric, you have been invited to come on board, and that will be the last in the audience for this round until the next round.
All right, I'm going to keep it brief, but it's been a long time since I've been
It has, man.
It has been. School, about to take a chemistry quiz for dimensional analysis. It's a pain going through colleges. Like, just came out of one, but prior to going back to school this year,
Yeah, I can only imagine.
around late August, I was attending this. Have anyone heard of the Modernizing Rail Conference 2021?
Yeah.
So, I was there being your unofficial ambassador. So I got a bunch
awesome.
of good, very good. Like, I took some notes down. Primarily, they get some people that are pretty good. And so, there's a couple I want to show you. Like, a lot of people were there. The person who was basically the brainchild of the Amtrak Cascade was there. Sorry, studying stuff.
You there?
Still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Basically, tons of people. We had a woman in charge of Istanbul's project, Istanbul's metro projects. Was also there. We had let's say again, the brainchild of Amtrak Cascades. It's all of the 90s who basically got everything together. And there's also a bunch of other loosely connected activists from all over the place, all over the world, quite literally.
Right.
Came together on this one little site. So I represented the bunch, got into a bunch of good sessions, especially over. There was also some guys I would like to recommend would probably be some of F Lane at Transit Matters, as well as W Marsh. Very good people. Probably one of the best in the not just in the aviation industry, basically in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, some of these conferences are pretty good, and a lot of them are free, especially now and online. So it's very easy to go ahead and jump in.
You there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Sorry, it's just I'm in a bit of a time crunch.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. So is there anything that popped out to you, one in particular, or anything from what we've covered today that you want to comment or ask questions on?
Yeah, virtually. Well, there wasn't as much, but it's just I haven't been on here for a very long time. And just I do want, if I can, I've been emailing you during the past couple of I think I got emailed some of the guys in the comments, but from a previous video. But it's just that I just wanted to came on here just basically to recommend all the presenters I did meet over there.
Right. No, that's fine. If you want to send anything to me, be my guest. And of course, understandably, things have been very out of whack, to put it very lightly, for the past several months. So it's going to be hard to get back to everybody, especially since I've gotten the password to the ARC Secretary email, so I'm going to try to get that on set. So I'll still be using arcsecretary1@gmail.com for having that there. I know, Holly, bless her soul, that what she was doing was very good for the club, and she was really helped to bring things forward.
Yeah.
So
like I texted, like I commented on your post in August. We all gotta to quote Walt Disney, we all gotta keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's the thing. All right, man, cool. We're kind of running on time crunch. Anything else you want to add in?
Yeah, given the recent swing around, I haven't been much in the transit realm lately, but given the recent I've been noticing my airline predictions are starting to come true. Have you heard of if you've ever been recently Air Italia has just went kaput.
Right.
Yeah, we're already seeing this trend's gonna start coming over here pretty soon. I'm predicting it. Especially you're seeing a lot fewer CRJs on the airport. You ever go in the average airport, you see these. You don't see as many CRJ flights.
Right.
Especially it's starting to happen, and
Yeah, because people.
Literally.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and again, it's because the airline industry, the way that it's been run, is very artificial. Again, a lot of it, like Air Italia and a lot of these government-run airlines. I think is it Malaysia Airlines or Singapore? I know one. Yeah, one of those that folded too, or Thailand, I think. But yeah, the thing is that a lot of these government-run airlines, a lot of them are trying to compete with other countries in the same regions, and they will throw in a lot of money, even when there's not passengers running on there, in order to keep that going and to keep that service going. It has very much less to do with national pride and more to do with trying to keep a business afloat in the hopes that it would at some point be able to bring about market share and a profit in the next 10, 15 years, but they never do, so they just keep propping it up down the line. In a sense, it's a kind of a zombie company. A lot of these airlines, they don't make any real profits. And if you see the only ones that would show how the airlines would actually be running, all these budget airlines in the United States, to show how close the margins are to running an airline, it's very, very tight. And because of the amount of funding that they get from the U.S. government and other sources and other tax breaks that they get, because they don't pay for the airports, for most of the maintenance, they only pay for their ports and whatnot, and for their their gates.
For a bit.
Sure.
There is an exception. Have you been noticing Breeze? Like, has anybody noticing Breeze or any other, like, the new low cost airlines? You're looking, like, for example, there's also it's not Value Jet. It's this other airline out in the west, like it's Avela. Can't pronounce its name. It's Avelo. It's Avelo Airlines.
Okay.
Both of those are the future airlines. They're serving like markets that they are either too small or they're too long of a distance between hubs. Or basically parts that are underserved,
right?
Like Providence, like that's the future of low-cost airlines, like that I've been preaching about. I'm finishing up that article, which is again temporarily suspended on, like
yeah,
blood happens.
Yeah, so again, I understand where you're coming from. I'm trying to keep things quick, but yeah, to kind of bring my point in with what you're saying, if airlines were to run. If they had to run like Amtrak does, that they have to pay for all their own infrastructure, for their stations and everything like that, 9 out of 10 of them would be out of business. No doubt about that. So that's the problem, because they're running on a model that is able to prop them up and keep them afloat, pun intended. But yeah. Anyway, Aegis, I appreciate you coming up on here and coming on board. Thank you for coming on, man.
All right, back to the meat grinder that is chemistry.
Good luck on that. I hope you get through.
I hope I get through unscathed.
Yeah. All right. Take care, man.
All right. See ya.
All right. Okay. So that's the end for these round of calls. We will have a last round of calls at the end of this. We are going to go over a couple of bright line things, and that will be the end of this stream. So we're at 9:49, so it's going to be a little bit over 2 hours, depending on how many segues that I take. Kind of wish that, again, I'm gonna be like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but there's a character that they keep saying, I wish this character was here, but I'm gonna keep saying that about Holly. I wish she was here, because she would keep me from going off these segues half the time. But we're gonna try to keep things succinct. Again, less articles and just more just talking about the quality of them rather than going through 10 to 20 different articles. So, as we talked about with one of our previous callers, the Brightline train sets, the new Bright Red and some other train sets are coming into Florida. So here is comprising of 4 coaches and 2 charged diesel locomotives. So this will most likely be for the commuter services, because they're all 4 coaches. Travel 3,000 miles from Siemens Mobility North American Manufacturing headquarters in Sacramento, California, where it made its debut on September 28th. And we can have a video over here. So you can see the first train set for the Orlando expansion. Look at that. And look at how smooth those railroads are, because they've been cleaning them up up and down the FEC. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 coaches. Yeah, so it's being towed to its final destination and its home. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe not final destination. I don't know, maybe in 20, 25 years or so they'll bring in some new trains or something like that and probably be put in a museum. It belongs in a museum. Nah, this is finally we're starting to catch up with the world here. Clean diesel, 125 mile. Well, cleaner diesel, 125 mile an hour trains. So yeah, look at that. There's some nice drone footage over there, going about 40 miles an hour or so. There we go. Yeah. All five new train sets will operate along Brightline's Phase 1 67-3 station line from Miami to West Palm Beach. There you go. Which launched in 2018, and its Phase 2 170 mile an hour extension, 170 mile extension to Orlando, which is now more than 60% complete and slated to open in 2023, according to Brightline. So for those of you guys still asking in the comments below, we've covered this over and over again. 2023. The estimated date to Orlando. Total system ridership is projected to reach 6 million annually. The ride from Central to South Florida is expected to take around 3 hours and 15 minutes and will carry passengers from Brightline South Florida stations in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach to Orlando Station at Orlando International Airport. All right, so that's very quick, dry, and you saw those trains going in there. Beautiful, beautiful sight to see. What a bright, sunny day. So here we are. And then here's another article from the Palm Beach Post. Brightline is almost back. Drivers will see more train traffic as companies tests routes. So there will be more Brightline trains going ahead in and about. Let's see this video over here. So you can see at the Orlando station, which we were inside for a bit of it. They still have to go ahead and add the railroad ties down there, but look at that, they're already getting the alignment done, and you can see, look, here's the thing, guys, you compare this to the progress that California has done, because this is the thing, I know some people are going to go ahead and it's getting to the point where you're kind of being apologists for California. Again, yes, we want California High-Speed Rail Authority to succeed, but they've been building basically for almost as long as Brightline has started, been around, got built, and going. Yes, I know it's not fair because Brightline has their own right-of-way already, and all they had to do was add a second track and update everything. I get all that. Yes, Florida is flat. But guess what? The Central Valley is also pretty flat too. Okay, so it's kind of apples to apples there. If anything, we're talking about Fuji apples to Granny Smiths. Okay, it's not that much of a difference. But look at this. They're already getting everything prepared. They're getting, the viaducts or whatever. Yeah, some of them are not as big, but they're getting that. They're getting the tracks done. California still has not laid any tracks. They're dragging their feet on this on purpose. Maybe, again, there's a whole lot of issues and a whole lot of reasons as to why, and there may be some reasons that we don't know about. Okay, the reality is they don't have tracks on there. They keep trying to go ahead and say maybe it's changed. I don't know, but that's the issue. So you can see over here, Florida in Brightline is building a heck of a lot faster than California. So it just goes to show you there's a complete difference, night and day difference of how things get done. Okay, so this is just some stock music. So yeah, look at this. And if you guys follow Roaming Rail Fan, at some point I will probably bring him on to an interview, maybe sometime in the next month or so. I know I said I was going to bring a whole lot of people on interviews. Let's put it this way, plans have changed very drastically. You know very well why. And what I said was going to happen hasn't really happened as well. And we had a lot of plans for this year, and things kind of haven't, weren't putting in place. Were getting put in place, both on my fault for dragging my feet. I pulled off of California, but a lot of it, again, now due to when finally things were going to get back into order, crap happens. But look at this. Yeah, look, they're building bridges. They're getting things done. They're fixing bridges that already exist. They're fixing crossings. They're getting a whole lot done. All over the place, up and down the coast, and up, east and west from Cocoa to Orlando. So this is just very much a supercut of everything in there. Brightline. I don't know if Brightline. They probably should be paying Roaming Braille-Fan at this point for all the work he's done. I mean, he's giving them free advertising. If not, doing it as a hobby, yeah, sure. But Brightline should be, giving him some sort of support. I'm pretty sure they are. But yeah,
I mean, I thought they took him to Siemens or something like that, or into. I mean, he's getting some very exclusive views, so
oh yeah,
he's getting paid. Definitely.
Yeah. And I know that is. And Brightline is very good. If you know the right people in Brightline, they are very good in getting you behind the scenes footage. And as we've done before with Brightline, at the time All Aboard Florida, I mean, we've gotten a lot of interviews from them and everything. So, once we get things back in a more working order over here, I mean, we're getting our own train over here starting to get back on our feet. And I know, things have been tough for us. Things have been tough for me, very, very tough. But, we got to carry this cross and keep on going to the very end. That's what we got to do. So again, very cut and dry, very common sense. Trains will kill you if you get in front of a speeding train. Train dangerous. Do not cross. It's very simple. What to know when Brightline returns about schedules and masks. When Brightline service starts, the service times and routes will not be changing, so they'll keep everything about the same as it was before. Brightline will run the same schedule it had before it suspended services, so they're not cutting back services. Fares will be similar to what passengers are used to. Again, they probably will come up a little bit because the cost of oil is, well, yeah, according to company's president Patrick Goddard. In addition, passengers and team members will be required to wear face masks on trains and in stations. That's according to TSA and DOT compliance. The company's employees will be required to be vaccinated, but passengers will not be required to show proof of vaccination. So take that with what you will about the employees and about ridership. Okay, I'm just giving you guys the news, what you want to think about it, because I know some guys here were saying some things about Rainbow Trains. Again, I'm just trying to keep things on point and to the schedule about what's going on with infrastructure. I understand all you guys' feelings. Just trying to keep it on there. Believe me. All right, but let's go. Here's the last thing. We're gonna see some pictures. So this is my family took over in Aventura. Darius and my dad over there. So you can see this is where the Aventura station is going to be. This is Ives Dairy Road Bridge over here. Aventura Mall is east of this. The US 1 is behind these giant hedges over here. It's over the hedge. Maybe you'll find a squirrel there high on energy drinks and caffeine, and a raccoon voiced by Bruce Willis. Maybe not. But as you can see over here, they are putting down the ties and they are getting things really quickly done over here. And I've been there. I was there 2 months ago, and I took a lot of footage right before the day Holly passed away, so I was gonna get a lot of that footage done, and things happened, but I will, once I probably go over there soon, I probably will put footage together and see where things are and how things have progressed. So I will kind of do a sort of settled video, and again, this is my neck of the woods, so we'll look at that. Oh dear, why is it not coming out over here? Let me see, open all these pictures and let's do a slideshow. There we go. Okay, perfect. Now we got it going. All right. So as you can see over here again, this is where the station is going to be, and you can see it's already coming up fairly quickly. This is where the station is going to be. Okay. So let's go ahead to the next picture. There we are. Got the ties. We got one of those placer drains, or one of those rail tie cars going ahead and putting in. There you go. You got concrete ties, you got steel rails, and they'll go ahead and weld them together and etc. Put that all together. So things are moving rather quickly there in Aventura for the new station, and they'll get that done. Here you go. Look at that. Well, this is not the station. So Aventura Mall is getting prepared to not only add the crosswalk, if I remember correctly, back and forth to the station to connect directly and walk into the mall, but there will also be a new hotel in the Aventura Mall that they're building at the same time as well. So yes, now you can go ahead and probably spend $2,000 a night at a hotel if you're bougie like that. I know nobody has said that since like 2005, but I'm old school, guys. And then go ahead and spend $2,000 for a ridiculous Louis Vuitton purse. You know, that makes the world go around, I guess. But yeah, here you go. Let's see some actual real work getting done, as you can see over there. So there you go. Look at that. And again, that's jobs, baby. Jobs. Down in South Florida, or trabajo, as they would say down there. And yeah, here's another hotel. This is by the Beach Express over here off of US 1. This is looking toward the southeast. So you go east over here along this, you'll go over to A1A and the beach. Over here would be US 1, and north of this would be directly the Aventura Mall. Yeah, and here's the you can tell it's Aventura. Here's a Rolls Royce Ghost and a Porsche. I believe that's a Panamera. I think that's a Panamera. Yeah. And I guess somebody here that works at the mall in their Hyundai Elantra 2001 or something like that. You gotta have people that work, right? So yeah, here you are. So this is where things are getting built over here in sunny South Florida. Well, sunny when it's not raining or thundering. Here at the Aventura Mall, yeah, or hurricane. Even though we haven't had many hurricanes down there
Yet.
Knock on wood, and nomine Patri Filii Spiritus Sancti. Make sure everything doesn't. No hurricanes, or at least as minimal damage as possible, please. So things are moving ahead there. Yeah, look at that. Work. So yeah, there you go, guys. Things are moving ahead down in South Florida where Brightline is there. So yeah, things are going good. So probably when I get there, I'll probably be seeing more of this going on. I remember this was all filled with weeds and grass and stuff like that all the way up over here. I know this picture isn't very high resolution, but it's a phone camera. It's what it is. And then sent to me via text, so it's probably not whatever 12, 15 megapixels that it was. But this whole area over here, so this is where the original tracks are from the FEC, the double tracks over here. This is what they're adding here for where the station is going to be. All this was grass, gone. So now it's going to be rail. Grass is overrated. People planting grass in front of their houses. Go plant a garden or plant some tracks, plant some rail, plant some ties. There you go. Plant things that are going to work, not grass. Grass is overrated. Alrighty, guys. So that's where we are. That's where we're at. Ruben, anything you want to add?
I'm just enjoying the views of the new construction of all that's going on. I know I've been a bit silent, but it's very interesting, because I'm also happy they're providing options to have trains sidetracked, for a fast service. So that's a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
I've also been reading chats and seeing what's a good question to answer, and someone was asking about what's going on with Via Rail. It's Via Rail. They're still they're a bigger burning wreck than Amtrak. Somehow they are, but they're a bigger burning wreck. They're starting to retake usual service, which is 2-3 trains each week. And the east side of Canada, the French-speaking part, Quebec and Notre Chose, people are very discontent because Via Rail is not, taking usual service of 3 trains a week.
Yeah, for as much as we complain here in America, the dystopia of Canada is in a far worse state. Unfortunately for the Canadians, if they're watching this in a gulag up in the Great White North. So yeah, that's where things are kind of going over there. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead. Let me see anything else in the comments over here that stood out or familiar. Let me see. Someone's asking, stop asking the same question over and over. I get it. But sometimes I don't see the question, so maybe repeating it, not to an extent, right? You don't want to go ahead, post a question and double post it after that, and that's kind of ridiculous. But for some things, when the Caltrain electrifications, we've covered that before. I believe 2024 when they're going to finish the whole thing. They've already done a good amount of it.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen the picture of Durham Station in San Jose?
Yeah, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, it's like okay, yeah, they're doing it. Yeah, I mean, if people have some questions, I think we have time for a few more questions because I'm starting to get hyperactive, so I want to be useful right now.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right.
Is there a direct trail line across the Appalachian Mountains? Dangerous? Pittsburgh?
There's a few. There's a
Yeah.
few. But not really much that's in service because a lot more rail lines kind of want to get around the Appalachian Mountains because of how expensive it is to run through there. But there are some. Let me see. We could use high-speed rail in here in Toronto. Open up more suburbs and the ease of housing crisis for us millennials here. Well, you kind of want to close up the suburbs and either concentrate people in the urban areas or make them more rural. And that's the thing, guys. Look, when we keep saying suburbs bad, when you look at the United States as it was before, when you had the golden era of rail lines. Ruben, there's some interference coming out of your microphone or something.
Oh yeah, that was my dog running against my cable.
Oh, okay. All right, not to worry. Okay, but yeah, what I was back to what I was saying. When you had the golden age of railways, right, you still had the majority of Americans living in rural areas. Where you started to see the decline was with the increase of suburbanization and with the increase of easy access to the automobile and the prop up of the airline lobby. And again, you have different variables in there. There's a lot more, and we've talked about this close to ad nauseum if you've been following us for as long as a lot of people have been. But that's really the main issue. Again, correlation doesn't equal causation, but you can definitely see a correlation in the decline of railroad passengers and the increase of suburbanization. It doesn't work. Suburbs are a failure. Like the post that I put up here, the America Starter Pack, the America Suburb Starter Pack. Let me see if I can bring up that post again because it was kind of funny. But yeah, you don't see this in other countries, in other places. A lot of suburbs are pretty either empty or they don't work as well. Or they don't provide that much of a connection for people. That's really the issue with that. The urban areas, downtowns and large cities, are there mostly for people to go back and to live there and to work there, where the majority of a lot of more labor-intensive work and blue-collar work happens. In rural areas where you have more close-knit communities, cabin economies, and also farming and agriculture, okay, which is very important in the United States to have our own agriculture economy, which we do very well, quantity-wise. Quality-wise, not so much because everybody is on corn syrup and soy, so it's not making a healthy population at all. Look, I gotta say, just one thing that just go off topic a little bit. I was volunteering at a food pantry yesterday, and I do gotta say it is, some people take this comment, not too nicely, but I do gotta say it is impossible. It is impossible to starve in this country at the current state that we're at, and I do think that we're heading to an area that because we're getting so many people coming into this country. And so many people that don't really understand what's going on. When some sort of supply chain failure happens, that's when a lot of things are going to happen. Because it's not going to be that we run out of food or anything like that, or a bad harvest. That's nearly improbable to happen now. That you have a bad harvest and everybody starves. Okay, that with technology and the way things have gotten and how fake food is at some point, you're not going to have food. In fact, we waste about 30% of our food. Okay, so and the majority of the world now is not having a starvation issue. The majority of the world now is having an obesity issue. So we have too much food, if anything. It's more that our supply chain is so clogged up, as we've seen earlier, with so much other garbage that we don't really need, and we're not producing our own goods, and we're not producing any real assets, tangible assets that we as a people can be able to use to better our nation and to better ourselves and to better our families. We don't have that. So we don't have a way of where we're looking at to actually move forward and a direction of where this country is going. I mean, we're just, as the meme kind of goes, the consumers consume culture. It is an issue. It's wrong. It's a problem, and we're seeing it that it's not acting very well. It's not working. So here's the meme that I shared on YouTube. Let me see if I can zoom into here. Open image in UTab. Let me see if that works. So yeah, here's the up-and-coming American Suburban Town Starter Pack. As you can see, new homes starting in the low 650s, 650K, not 650 a month. These are cookie-cutter suburban homes, which are terribly built. They're and the cost of, again, there's several YouTube videos that have gone over this of how suburbs are bankrupting this country and bankrupting people severely. It is not a good thing. It is not a good thing. And the more and more that I look at it, the worse and worse that it gets. So here you go, your one-bedroom studio or your townhouse or whatnot, your duplex complexes and everything put in between here, your rental properties. $950 a month, $500 security deposit, $20 parking pass. And I know it because I've been through it, and I trust me, I know. $950 a month in some areas, that's actually not that bad. In places like South Florida, prepare your behinds, because it's gonna get some preparation H ready for how much that's going to rail you in terms of pricing. So here you are, your BS cookie cutter corner strip mall. So this lease is too high. This corner lease never rents, and you've seen that all the time. Your cell phone store, that's not your carrier. It's probably some Cricket Wireless or Verizon or something like that. You have an insurance broker, checks cashed. Your hair salon, your Fantastic Sams, your Great Clips, your Sport Clips, your Supercuts. Although Sports Clips are pretty good. It's Sport Clips the last time. For the price, it's pretty good for men. Your Chinese restaurant, your China King, China Palace, China Garden, Taste of China, etc. One of those. Insert your Darden restaurant over here. Your Olive Garden, Longhorn, Bahama Breeze, Red Lobster. Yeah, those are all the same companies. Your minimum $15 car dealerships on the same road. I don't know how many roads you see this all over America. There's with the amount of cars that they're selling, and with the amount of cars that are now sitting on the lots because they don't have the chips that are available in there. So they're just basically sitting there useless. They're just big giant hulks of paperweights. Your drugstores, and this is the problem with the way that we run this thing. I should probably go ahead and do a whole video of how bad the suburbs are, but make it more comedic, because some people don't have the comedic side. We gotta smile sometimes, right, guys? so yeah. And again, it's kind of irony. If you guys are familiar with the troll face, the UN meme, we have you surrounded. Come live in the designated American suburb number 76543. I hate the suburbs. That's kind of that meme there. And then I shared another one over here. They feed us poison, so we buy their cures while they suppress our medicine. That's another one of those memes that adapted to our line. Again, I've said this over and over again, and I apologize for not following up on it, of having a train or infrastructure or transportation meme review. I should probably do that transportation meme review. Bring in probably a heck of a lot more people and make that, because memes are. Don't let your memes be dreams, but we'll see. We'll see where things are going, guys. All right. Yeah. That's the problem. How can cities accommodate population without suburbs? Even Tokyo has some. Again, because the thing is that Tokyo is not, making suburbs. There's places like Saitama, but you compare Saitama and its density compared to any major American city, and it's still a heck of a lot more dense. It's really just more kind of urbanized sprawl that slowly builds up over time. And that's what Tokyo is compared to other cities. And again, Tokyo doesn't just, the thing is that when you've had the sprawl happen, Tokyo also started building rail lines, connecting with all that sprawl in there. And yes, there's points that it is very expensive to own a car in Tokyo, and that makes things a lot harder for people to be able to own a car. But then again, it's also a heck of a lot easier for you to go ahead and use transit and to walk around, Tokyo and the surrounding area is a very walkable area. In fact, you don't even have to walk that much to get between your different transit points from point A to point B. And there's not that much walking. Maybe if anything, you're walking around a 5-block radius, if that, to get through certain points. But still, it's a very walkable city. Do a suburb topic one day? Yeah, I should. I should probably do a stream just talking about solely suburbs and that, or a video and then a stream afterwards, and not much news or just recent news. Talking about suburbanization and transit. Yeah, we should try that. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and bring in. We have one more person that we have not brought into the audience, and then we'll probably end it there, guys, and then we'll see you, shortly. So let's go ahead and bring in our last audience member, Chicago Rail fan, with his SPQR avatar on here, Senatus Populesque Romanus. I would do the thing, but YouTube will probably call me a meanie poop head.
Well, you don't want me to say it?
Oh, no, you can say it, definitely.
I believe it's Senatus Populesque Romanus?
Yep.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, Senatus Populesque Romanus. And I know because I've done enough Latin masses in the last several years to know enough Latin, so yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Day so far?
Hanging in there, man. How about you?
Had a pretty busy weekend. I had fun last night because I got to drove down I-94 in Chicago, and I went pretty fast on the highway.
No, just watch out there.
No worries. I'm a good driver.
Take your word for it.
Well, the thing is, like, as a Zoomer, I haven't really got the chance to, drive as much. So I guess that's why, like, I'm like a fan of the automobile. Cause, like, I remember when I was like a little younger, like, I used to be like not so friendly to cars, but like, once I realized it, it's just like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna be hooked up to this.
Yeah, and again, it's everything in moderation, and everything has a balance. So that's what works. All right, awesome.
I've been wanting to ask on your whole take on the suburbs, because like I know you've kind of like a good amount of opposition towards the suburbs.
Yeah,
right?
Very much.
Because like I've lived in both dense cities and also like suburbs, and like I gotta say, like, I will say suburban life is definitely spread out and sometimes like that, but like sometimes city life can get like a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah, most definitely, especially here in American cities and the way they are right now. And again, because there's a sort of carrot and stick to it, right? Where people are leaving the cities because the stick of the cities is that they're dangerous. They don't really provide as many amenities. They're not as walkable as they used to be, and they're kind of dingy, and they're not as great as you look at pictures of American cities back in the 1920s, the 30s, and the 40s. Completely different, night and day difference. And there's a lot more people walking into cities despite having less of a population. You still had a larger density. Compared Detroit to what it is now, compared to what it was in its glory days, and it's a night and day difference. But in the prospect of, the big carrot is that why people are moving to the suburbs again, you have the stick of the cities, and then you have the carrot of the suburbs is like, you can have your space like a rural area, but you can also be close to the city, so you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. And again, it doesn't really work well, it doesn't really mesh well, because you kind of have this in between that takes kind of all the cons of everything, and they really start to come out because, in suburbs, you don't really have that much of a community. You don't really have that much of a tight-knit economy because everybody's sort of driving around. And I know there's some places, where Holly's parents live, and where their family lives. It's kind of a more tight-knit community, but again, there's some wrongs with that, and it's kind of a weird sort of suburb because it's one of these suburbs that were built in the last, I would say 40, 20, 30 years or so, where they're kind of right built where in a rural area where it's at, because like right next to that plot is a large or two or several large plots of corn and soybeans and whatnot. And it's kind of weird. So you're kind of in this sort of rural setting, but you know it's suburban, and there's still more suburban sprawl happening. Where now you have these, some plots are being taken away to have these cutter houses, and then on top of that, you don't really have a walkable area where there's no sidewalk. So people are kind of walking on the side of the road, or bicycling, or skateboarding, or taking a jog on the side of the road, and it's kind of weird. So they're trying to bring, some elements of the city and some elements of a rural area, and it doesn't really work. So that's really the issue, because it doesn't work. Point blank, put simple down. Whereas in an urban area, if you put cities how they work, how they should be, you look at cities like Tokyo, you look at cities like Rome, or some other cities that that are actually kind of dense, put together, and have metro lines, stuff like that. And of course, I know that there's some European cities that are not as nice as they used to be, like Paris. Kanye West can say things about that. But look, here's the thing. It's where people want to live, is have a place where they can call their home and be able to have a nice walkable area and be able to get their things done and kind of live their life and have a community, right? In a suburb, you don't really have that. In a rural area, you do have a community, and it's a very more tight-knit community that you'll have a neighbor that it's half a mile away or a quarter mile away, and be able to have that. So there's some things to that. Where we have to have a balance, and things that worked well, it's worked for thousands of years, because that's the way things work, honestly. Suburbs are a very new idea, and they failed miserably. It was, who was it, Levitt, that created the idea of the Levitt towns that became the suburbs. It hasn't worked. It's really subverted the idea of what a community is, and it's failed. We know this because the way America is going, in terms of every single happiness index or economic index, has been completely negative. I mean, there has been nothing positive, except for billionaires' incomes, honestly, for the United States. And we got new phones, whoop-de-doo, and internet. Honestly, I'd rather live without internet and everything if I could just live a nice, happy life. I'd trade that all in for a day. Get back to steam trains. Go back to steam trains. If it all worked.
According to some people, not fans of the city, you wouldn't really want to have like a family of 6 living in a small area in the city. I can see why people like that would want to live in the suburbs, more spacious, you can get a bigger house there.
Yeah.
For your kids.
But even most people in the United States are not even having that many kids anymore. There's some communities that are, like some Amish or traditional religious communities that do have a lot of kids. Look at for example, the Orthodox Jewish community in New York. They live in an urban area, and they sure as heck have a lot of kids. So they make it work. And the Amish communities, let's go to the other end of the spectrum where they live in a rural area. They have a whole lot of kids themselves, and they make it work. So it's you have examples where they do work. Unfortunately for the average American, you'll have a suburb where they have maybe 1 or 2 kids in a 3-bedroom house, and everybody has their own bedroom, and nobody's really connected. It's not the way that life was intended to be, and it hasn't really worked. And we see the levels of depression going up, skyrocketing in this country, and other sorts of things. Suicide rates, happiness index, going down, etc. Or suicide rates are going up, pretty quickly, especially now. So there's again, this all ties in together, and why I keep bringing in a lot of these economic aspects and a lot of these urban planning aspects into talking about trains, is because it all connects in this one gleaming railroad connection. It all does connect.
Yeah, it's well, the thing is, I like communities. I like a nice gathering of people. But when it gets to a scale when your city's massive, or it's good. You don't really have a sense of community there. Sure, you may have your local neighborhood there, but it's once you get further enough, it's these people you don't really recognize them as much, and it's
There's some, and of course, back in the days in America, and again, I don't want everybody to agree with me, and I don't need everybody to agree with me. I'm just picking here points here and there, and we're trying to have some dialogue over here. And again, my apologies if I'm taking tangents or whatnot. You're the last caller, so I'm kind of taking liberties to go ahead and go off tangent and have this back and forth conversation. And Ruben, I'm sorry you've been kind of quiet in there. If you want to jump in on board as well, you're free to jump on in.
I was just quietly listening. I mean, suburbs. I think Belgium is like what's Belgium like? We're the size of Maryland, but the population density of New Jersey, something along those lines.
Yeah.
So we don't really have suburbs, but we have lots and lots of urban buildings. So basically, if you would look from a topographical situation point of view, Belgium is basically one big city, except the southern part is a bit off. But there's also something very interesting because in the 1980s in Ghent, they built this new tram line from the center to Evergem. And the special thing was this tram actually used to run through the fields. And the fields were redeveloped as suburbs. So they had a suburb developed around a tram line. So the tram line was the most popular tram line in the city. But still it has the allure of a suburb. I mean, I know suburbs is something that's gonna, be around forever. And
I wouldn't say forever. I mean, I think as quickly as they've come up, is how they're probably gonna go in. I don't really see suburbs kind of staying around in 200 years or anything like that. If that, I wouldn't say even 200 years.
I mean, what I tried to say was like, not the current amount of suburbs, basically not the LA kind of doom dystopia amount of suburbs, because let's be honest, those plywood houses are not going to survive for another 20 years.
Yeah, it'll end up something like out of the movie Elysium, where everybody's living on top of boxes on each other, something like that.
Yeah.
Actually, that kind of brings me up another point, though. It's like when you talk about the suburbs, like you're talking about like those really far out suburbs, like they're like close to the rural areas. It's just like it's like a small plot of land like full of like houses and stuff like that. But like I've noticed in Chicago here, like we've got like a decent amount of like smaller suburbs that like just as dense as like the city or so. It's like, and the thing is like they kind of like build like a small sense of community there, and it's sort of like, I mean, you would classify that as a suburb, but like it's kind of like a small little city in a way, and like I would say like those are more preferable to like have rather than like a large city. It's like you can build like a small community off of like a small town. Like I could give like a few examples.
Yeah.
I mean, Chicago is very difficult because you say that Waukegan is a suburb, yes or no. So that's gonna be a very interesting.
Well,
I
the thing
mean,
is that Chicago's like, I think like around the 2000s, where like I believe like suburb to suburb commuting was like getting popular. Like instead of like people driving towards the city, like they would go like to a different suburb or like their suburb like to work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's like not really using like the city's infrastructure.
Yeah, because people sort of go, like out like let's say a place like Aurora, Illinois. And they're going back and forth between Chicago and whatnot. But that's kind of the issue, is that because you don't have anybody concentrated out in the city, because I was just looking around and fooling around with Google Maps. Looking at Belgium, you kind of see that there's a difference between, there's not really an urban sprawl. Yes, there's lined up, I would say kind of like, exurbs, but they're kind of lined up on tram lines or train lines, in a sort of logical fashion. Whereas in, let's say, Chicago, it's just a sprawl of just, random suburbs, as far away from the city as they can, to have, still a 45 or an hour commute, with traffic that, turns into 2 hours, and then you have a look at this, Aurora, you take, Interstate 88, to go into Chicago, that's the problem, is that, and of course, there's political reasons as to what happened, or demographic reasons, or as we said, in America, hey, look, let's call it as it is. It's white flight, right? That a lot of people moving out of the cities.
Like you see an interesting trend though. Like if I look at like electoral maps and stuff like that, like I've noticed like a lot of the cities like tend to vote, left leaning, and like the rural areas tend to vote like right leaning or so.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely a political influence there.
Oh yeah, and that's why a lot of people, because they don't have representation in the cities, they'll just a lot of them will just move out. But you see like something like here, like look at Brussels. Look at that. There's the city. You don't see that much sprawl. The minute you get out of there, boom, there's already fields and farms already starting to pop up right out of there, and that's it. And then you have some smaller communities, and then you have some larger towns and some smaller cities and stuff like that. But that's a more logical basis. And again, this was all done thousands of years ago. Europe is a much older developed area. Since the time of the Romans, you could say, right, where a lot of this happened, and a lot of these cities are already established through the Roman Empire, and kind of split off as things happened.
If you want to know something crazy about Belgium, if you would draw a line between Ghent, Antwerp, Leuven, Brussels, and back to Ghent, you get a area of around that's one of the densest populated areas in Benelux. It has around 820 people per square kilometer.
Yeah.
Around, take or leave. So it's extremely dense. But the way we build, we just we put everything together. We still have ribbon buildings, so everything is still connected. But there's also open space. When we talk suburbs in Belgium, we have a completely different meaning than we have of the dystopian themes of suburbs of the USA.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing, is that, in suburbs, correct me if I'm wrong here, there's a much more local economy where you can just walk out of you don't take a car, you walk out of your house and you go to a local market or something and buy what you need for the day or for the week, and, walk around, and everybody kind of, knows each other in a certain area, and then, you have that available.
Yeah. Also fun fact, on the map of Belgium, you could actually see my hometown. It's between Dendermonde and Luchem. Good luck finding which town it was where I live. When I get doxed.
Yeah, again, look at this. You see Brussels, and then a couple miles away, I would say, I guess, in American speak, about 20-25 miles away, you have Antwerp, and then over to the west, about 25-30 miles, you have Ghent. And again, like you see right in the middle of these, you have some towns like Aalst here, or Aalst, I guess you would pronounce it. But
you said it right.
Aalst, yes, okay. Yeah. But there's not really much. It's very small towns, just dotted all over the place. But that's it. These are all mostly rural areas that are just dotted out in between, in their own little communities where you'll have some people that go ahead and take a bus over to a local train station and go ahead and visit the city for a day, and then they can come right back on the same day. When you look at, let's say, compare to this, and you look at, a city like Indianapolis, I would say Indianapolis is probably one of the worst examples of just ridiculous sprawl. Okay, look at
how many people do live in Indianapolis? How many people live there?
Because here's the thing: Indianapolis is a city county thing. It's kind of unique in the United States, where the city and the county are a unigov system. So the city proper of Indianapolis is not that many people, but in terms of the county and everybody, they count it as about close to 1 million people or so. But they're all very spread out, in this whole area over here. You see this 465 corridor going all around. This is where the city proper is. And you see right here, this is the middle of here. And Indianapolis is a very nicely planned out city, and it's pretty nicely, in the 1 mile square area in there. And kind of out of the downtown area where you have these more urban areas. But here's the problem, not too many people live in here. It's, this very yuppie area, a lot of people that are, not from Indianapolis, live here. And there's, some very, few homes that have been owned in the family. And then you have like other areas over here. But the minute you start getting out, the problem is that you have these highways that are cutting right in between where houses used to be. So you can see here where this, like, this sort of street over here, this right street used to go. And it used to connect over here to where this now right street over here used to connect down. And these highways just bisected through these cities and just completely messed them up. It's ridiculous the way that they did this. And it's kind of cut up these cities. And now people just kind of live out, and you see where this sprawl just ends out over here, whereas a city like Brussels kind of ends around, in this area, in a 5 mile radius or so, all densed up. This just keeps going on, suburbs after suburbs after different, suburbs, And this keeps going out, and then you have like whole communities like Greenwood, which is a nice place, and it used to be a town, but it's kind of turned itself into a suburb of just connected into Indianapolis. And then you have other places here like Fisher's, Castleton, and all that other place. And again, look at this. It's all the same sort of houses. Look at this. It's all the same sort of streets where everything's all this cookie cutter houses of hastily built crappy houses that will fall apart within 10 years because they were done with cheap labor to go ahead and overprice them and bring people in. And it just keeps going and going and going and going and going until you finally get yourself out 10 miles out of there, and then you start to see some rural areas come in. It's like how much more are people going to be just leaving out of here and keep pushing this on? It just doesn't work. But anyway, okay, rant over.
Aurora is like I think Aurora is more like a city of its own. Like, it's kind of far out enough from Chicago. Like, certainly it is a suburb, but like, it kind of has like its own city center there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have places like Aurora and other places like in Michigan and the Midwest, especially where these used to be, sort of.
Out there, man.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, you did. Like, what were you saying? Something about Michigan?
Yeah, like cities like in Michigan and Wisconsin, very similar like Aurora, where they were basically their own cities and towns that, there's very few people that went in Chicago or back and forth. It wasn't a commuter city. People who lived in Aurora, worked in Aurora, and lived in Aurora and stayed in Aurora. Whereas it's turned in that people who live in Aurora just go back and forth between Chicago and that's the issue with that, is that you have this sort of commuter culture where people aren't living in their and working in their area. They're just being transient. They're not there's not really a home for them except their cookie cutter suburb house. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I mean, we still have a very strong commuting thing in Belgium as well. Like, every day around 200,000 to 300,000 people commute to Brussels. I just looked up a bit of facts. If I would, dissect Brussels, from point A to point B, if you were a pigeon, it would just fly in a straight line. I would take between 8 to 12 miles, and in that area of the Brussels capital region, there are around 1.2 million people that live there. So on the same area as the Indianapolis County, I would say in Belgium we have around 4 to 5 million people living.
Yeah. So let me bring this out to about a mile so we can bring it up to scale. So yeah, this is Brussels in a mile, and look at how dense it is. How many people live in there, working there, and yeah, you have commuter areas, outside the edges of Brussels, and in some small towns and whatnot. But and then you compare that to, let's say, a city like Indianapolis. I'm not gonna even get into to Miami, because I know some people are talking about Miami. Miami is complete sprawl everywhere. I'm just trying to bring it to a centrally located city with land all around. Okay, here is a 1 mile area of Indianapolis. Nowhere near as dense, and it just kind of trickles out all over the place, everywhere. And then you have the airport over here, and then more suburbs, and just everything just kind of walking around Indianapolis. But that's and this, again, I'm not at all picking on Indianapolis. This is kind of the issue with a whole bunch of American cities, is that you can see these same sort of issues and problems just repeat itself over and over again. Again, some place like Miami, this is just completely built up. Look at it. They're just going to build everything as they can all the way up into the Everglades, where they can stop it. And it's just there's no space here, and it just keeps everything is just it's like something out of like a cyberpunk dystopia. And then there's like little suburbs out here and there, same sort of suburban housing with the BS little man-made lakes and curly whirly streets that don't look at all natural.
I mean, hey, if you have a boat right there and you build yourself a little dock there, you can get out easily.
Oh yeah, no, there's some places, there's some nice places, like let's say like Eastern Shores over here, where all the some of the hoity-toity people and the Russian mafia live. I know because I've dated some Eastern Europeans that had some connections to the mafia. I didn't John Wick them or anything like that, but it's very much that sort of culture. I will say a good movie that I saw recently was Nobody. That kind of had it was done by the same guy who did John Wick. A pretty good movie if anybody wants to see that in action movies. But you have your boat over here and you can just go out over to the bay and out over here into Biscayne and going out into intercoastal waters and everywhere. So and it's nice. And then here's FIU Biscayne campus where we were situated right over here. This is the area where we at. This is where ARC started, right over here in Academic 1, AC 1. And there's the bay. It was a very beautiful view, I do gotta say. Nice campus. But yeah,
I'm
all
pretty
right.
sure Miami's still trying to be like the Netherlands there with all the waterways and all that.
You would think that there would be a lot more transit back and forth there, but that's very much more of a tourist thing. All these, the water taxis and whatnot. It's not an actual thing that people take because people don't really live and work in the same areas. They'll probably live somewhere out over, out west or somewhere else, and for example, like if you work at a restaurant, you're probably living somewhere in a trailer park if you can even afford that. And then you work in Hollywood Beach or something like that, or it's not really that. So everybody's just driving around all over the place, and there's really no transit to get people through and through. It's probably one of the worst examples, apart from LA, of ridiculous urban sprawl.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I don't really necessarily entirely blame the people want to who cause the sprawl just move out. Sometimes cities don't really are not really safe. There's a reason why people call Chicago Chirac.
Yeah.
No one wants to live in a crime-ridden city with a bunch of people here that are just gonna be mean to you and all that.
Yeah, I hear it's turning into a PvP zone now because the police are just leaving and they're
It's probably legal there.
And I don't blame them. Yeah, you're going into the wildy over here like in RuneScape.
It's safe there once you going through the south side there. It's you better watch out.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Take your Glock or get rocked. But that's Chicago.
Chicago's pretty strict, so.
All right, man. Yeah. So we're gonna end it over here. Last words. Anybody? I've talked more than enough.
Yeah.
David Mitchell, put your hand down. You're not going next. You already went.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. No worries, David. Next time we'll have everybody on there.
No hard feelings, man.
I know. All right.
Speaking of which, he created his own Discord server, I think it's about fancy trains, stuff like that. He wants to do his own show. I invited you to the server over, essentially a DM.
Yeah, sure.
By the way,
has more guests on there.
Oh yeah. By the way, our Rowan friend, I know what the safest CTA line is. By the way, Skooky Swift. That's the safest line there is.
Definitely that line. Yeah, it literally goes into a suburb, so that's safe.
I mean, it's the last remnant of the North Shore line, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Where the line turns on the segment from Dempster Skokie to Oakton Skokie, that's former CNW line. The Chicago, that's where the North Shore ran through, but I don't know how it connected with the loop, because I know the North Shore line did run through the loop.
Yeah,
it definitely did. That's why they have the shoes for that.
All right, man.
CNW was, I'm gonna say the CNW was probably the best extinct railroad to this day. Nothing's gonna convince me otherwise.
All right, guys, we're getting kind of late. We're heading, we're 15 minutes away from 11 o'clock here, and I don't understand. I completely understand if viewers are leaving. I don't blame you guys if it's gone too long, but that's what we do. We haven't done really, and I know everybody is more of a fan of the planned out videos and that sort of stuff. But we try to get these live streams here so we can keep ourselves sort of active. But yeah, let me see how can cities accommodate populations without suburbs? Okay, we already went over that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So most of the stuff that we've been saying. All right, guys. Yeah, I think we'll call it a day. But thank you for coming on, Chicago Rail fan. Again, it was kind of you kind of got lucky there because it's, it was the last caller, and we got into a good conversation talking about suburbs, and I think people needed to talk about that. But it's definitely a topic that we need to cover a lot with a lot more preparation, and I would say a video prior to having a full-on live stream talking about suburbanization. But thank you for coming on board, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll always miss 2000s. I'll say that.
Yeah, those were better days, man. Better days. All right. Well, take care, man. God bless.
You too.
Ciao.
All righty. Well, that's it. We're all, guys. Anything you want to add, Ruben, for the last word?
No idea really what I should add. Maybe I should walk around with my camera around, maybe film some stuff for art. Who knows? Would so give some interesting stuff.
Yeah, sure. If you wanna put some or put some videos out or anything like that, I'll probably start doing that. But I think Ruben, since you're pretty high up in the hierarchy of the club, I would suggest if you want to go ahead and make some videos yourself, and we can start doing that. Because at some point I do want to have user submitted videos on there or some sort of thing. So. Yeah, that's what I'm planning.
I mean, chat, what do you think? Would you like to see some comparative videos, or like how does transportation work in Belgium? Like, if you want to see it, just say it in the chats.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good. I think we can safely say that people will want to see that. Alrighty, well, everybody, that ends our trip here for tonight. Thank you all for coming on board and coming on this wild and wacky ride. I'm trying to put on OBS. For some reason, it's not coming up. I don't know why, but there we are. Perfect. Now I got it on there. All right. There we go. Yeah, so thank you all for coming on board. We will see you all next time. Take care. God bless.
Bye-bye.